I will now call to order the THPRD Board of Directors meeting for September 9th of 2020. Jessica, please call roll.
Ashley Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Here.
Tia Ping.
Here.
Heidi Edwards.
Here.
Wendy Kroger.
Here.
Felisa Monteblanco.
Here.
Thank you so much. So today we are starting with a proclamation that it is National Hispanic Heritage Month. So I'll ask my fellow board members to join me. I will start. So whereas our Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District proclamation by the Board of Directors, whereas each year Americans observe National Hispanic Heritage Month by celebrating the culture, heritage, and countless contributions of people of Hispanic descent, and
whereas the national observance began in 1968, and
whereas THPRD honors and values the unique and rich contributions of all community members and strives to create a welcoming and inclusive park and recreation system that is accessible and welcoming to everyone, and
sorry, I don't have the proclamation. So somebody read the next one and pretend you're me.
whereas,
got it.
Whereas the THPRD community is strengthened and made better by the many contributions of Hispanic people who live in our community, and
whereas Hispanic people have had a profound and positive influence on our community, and
whereas Hispanic people continue to make important contributions to the cultural, educational, economic, and political vitality of our community, and
whereas we honor the rich diversity of the people we serve.
now, therefore, the Board of Directors of the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District hereby declare the month of December 2020 as National Hispanic Heritage Month. And we do urge all those in the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District to support and promote this observance.
September 2020.
yes, thank you.
thank you to staff who wrote that. Super
yes.
important. Thank you.
Thank you to staff. Are we doing the declaration in Spanish as well?
That's not necessary.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, so our first agenda item today is a presentation about the emergency shelter from COVID-19 response. So Julie Rocha and Kim Marshall, handing it over to you.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors. I'm Julie Rocha, the Sports Department Manager. It is my pleasure to introduce Kim Marshall, the Executive Director of Project Homeless Connect of Washington County. She'll be sharing with you the partnership with THPRD, Washington County, and the Community Action Organization on a temporary emergency shelter for people experiencing homelessness. This shelter operated out of the Elsie Stir Center in April and May. Now I'll turn it over to Kim.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. You will also be hearing from Catherine Gallion of Community Action and Pat Rogers of Community Action today. We just wanted to take a few moments and let you know some of our lessons learned and give you a summary of kind of the experience we had with the extension shelters. Next slide, please. So, like I said, we're going to go over our impact, some of the challenges we had, tell you a few stories of the friends that we got to serve, and then talk about next steps and what our needs are. Next slide, please. So first and foremost, a huge thank you to you guys. You are one of the reasons that this was possible. As we're going to talk about throughout these slides and in our presentation, and if you read our report, finding sites to be able to bring our homeless friends inside was kind of difficult. And so we want to say a huge thank you to you for allowing us to use one of your sites. Because of your support, we were able to shelter 291 of our friends. 15 of those were veterans, 66 with disabilities. And because of your support, we were able to open 3 shelters total, 1 in Hillsborough and 2 in Beaverton, to support over 150 people over 77 days. And then also, as many of you probably know, the county was able to take over the Comfort Inn in Hillsborough for friends that were COVID positive. They had a safe place to go to be able to quarantine. We did transition 11 people into permanent housing. Now that number has increased since the extension shelters closed and continues to increase as time goes on, and we're able to work with folks and help them sustain that housing. And we have a couple of great success stories we're going to tell you. Next slide, please.
Hi, I'm Pat Rogers. So before COVID, the pandemic, there were 8 faith-based and nonprofit shelters operating during the winter months. Each were open 1 to 2 nights per week, leaving sheltering gaps depending upon the location in the county and the day of the week. So people either attempted to migrate around the county to stay sheltered, or they chose to remain outside on the off nights. Most of the shelters had to close a couple of weeks early due to the pandemic, apart from Beaverton Just Compassion Shelter that managed to remain open continuously until the transition we're going to talk about took place. So after the pandemic hit, we had to come together, and for the first time, it was a community-wide and coordinated effort to shelter houseless persons in Washington County. Tent camps were provided with sanitation and food services. COVID positive and asymptomatic persons were quarantined in a safe, supportive environment at the Comfort Inn. There was a countywide 7-day per week congregate sheltering of houseless persons that didn't present with symptoms. There was regular outreach provided to those not in shelters. And all of this was made possible by additional shelter funding from Oregon Housing and Community Services and the cities of Beaverton and Hillsborough. This comprehensive plan is shown in the flow chart at the bottom of the slide on the right-hand corner, but a clearer view of the flow chart is provided in our severe weather shelter extension report. Next slide.
So I'm Catherine Gallion with Community Action, and there are a few things that we knew going into this severe weather extension program, things that we were able to address with the new model, and things that will continue to be challenges going forward. So this is a little bit of a summary of some of the things that we learned. So barriers to exiting homelessness generally, instability, sporadic access to communication, and health and mental health challenges during the pandemic were exacerbated. So during the normal severe weather shelter system, transferring from the shelter site to shelter site night after night, and essentially being required to either traverse the county to access shelter nightly, or not, and only be inside for the days of the week that shelter was available in your community, become a challenge. So maintaining contact between organizations when folks are either unsheltered or required to do that kind of movement is very difficult. Navigating systems both organizationally and logistically. So if you, for example, have a job in the Beaverton area, but the shelter that night is only available in Sherwood, it's very difficult to maintain a work schedule. Folks were required to be at the door of the shelters when it opened in order to access a bed. So if they didn't get off work in time, they may not have a bed that night. Various logistical issues like that present a challenge in the standard severe weather shelter model and continue to exist when folks have no shelter at all. The lack of adequate supports for mental health and substance abuse services in the county are normally present a challenge. And then during the pandemic, well, most services have been provided by telephone. for unsheltered individuals or individuals in shelter, having consistent access to a phone, having a phone that is charged, that stays dry and functional, and having access to internet when you run out of minutes presents a challenge to engaging effectively in those services, in addition to the environmental stressors that make that treatment overall less effective. So if you're, for example, trying to address an anxiety issue and your living situation creates anxiety, it's very difficult to make progress on a treatment plan. And then we also realize how important advocacy is. So using that housing first model is very helpful. It helps remove a lot of those environmental stressors and logistical barriers to engaging in long-term movement towards stability and health and safety. And then what we really saw the most was that all of this is a shared responsibility. There is no way that any one organization or jurisdiction could have had the impact that this group was able to have by working together. And that relates to the next touch point, which is a complicated web of touch points, meaning people, we are asking unsheltered individuals who are oftentimes facing health, mental health, substance abuse challenges, environmental stressors, to navigate a complicated web of touch points, essentially with very little support and physical, structural, and environmental barriers. And I think the stories that we're about to tell really help highlight kind of what that means for an individual human in this situation.
Next slide, please. So our first story is about our friend Skeeter, and I am going to ruin it for you guys and tell you up front that this story ends really, really well. But this is a perfect example of that web that Catherine was just talking about, of all the different touch points it required to help this gentleman get into some sort of stable housing. And so Skeeter came to us, and he had sustained a traumatic brain injury, and he wasn't able to sustain his daily living. He did get SSDI, but he was not able to manage his finances, which made him vulnerable to fraud. And that happened. His former partner took over his finances, including the bank account, which led for him not having access. And it was just all these complicated things once we met him that we had to start diving into and figuring out, how do we help this man work towards self-sufficiency? And so through a partnership of many nonprofits and the county, we worked with the Hillsborough Police Department, who opened an investigation into the possible fraud, which helped us close the original account, help him open a new one. The Assist team did so much work. Melanie and her team were incredible at walking alongside with Skeeter and with this SSA and figuring out what happened with the fraud and where those funds went to. And then Project Homeless Connect and Luke Dorf partnered as well to help this man. And in the end, we were able to connect him with family and move him to Arizona. He had family come up here to Oregon just a few weeks ago and help move him to Arizona, where he was going to have a stable place to live. They were going to become his executor and help him with his finances. And that's truly just what this man needed. He needed some supports around him to be able to move him forward in the process. So this story ends on a really positive note, but it is just eye-opening for us how many agency partners it took to make this a success. So back again to what Catherine said, it's this shared responsibility, and it takes all of us. Next.
So the story of Madeline is kind of an example of how a person with a lot of profound health issues, who is also homeless, folks have a tendency to begin to disregard their health issues in favor of the fight or flight or self-preservation skill set. So what was going on with this person is we had a centralized screening process set up. And when this person was screened, we normally would have been able to detect health issues or any sort of disabilities that might compromise the person's ability to be in a congregate setting. And because of what I just described, this person did not disclose any health issues. So she wound up showing up at one of the shelters that night, and staff at the front door immediately recognized a few things. First of all, she's disabled and in a wheelchair. She had a bunch of other profound health issues, including incontinence and just the types of things that, first of all, you don't want to see a person like that houseless in the first place. But in a congregate setting like that, it just wasn't going to work. So with most of those situations, we were able to place people in motel settings. So once this person was able to be safe and indoors, a lot of these other health issues became more profound and noticeable. And so we had a lot of mental health stuff combined with the physical disabilities and things like diabetes and just a whole slew of different things coming together, including special dietary needs associated with the diabetes, and also behavioral health issues. So the person was confounding to work with at first. And then as we got to know her better and better and started including service providers from around the county, appropriate service providers around the county, it became evident that she needed to be hospitalized. And so we wound up getting her into St. Vincent's, and social workers at St. Vincent's immediately recognized that they would not be able to discharge her into the streets ethically. And so they were able to keep her in the hospital for almost a month while the other service providers in the county attempted to find assisted living facility that would accept her insurance. And we had to sort out her insurance needs and that sort of thing. So the end of the story is that she was discharged from the hospital into a Sherwood assisted care facility not long ago. And she is actually doing very well there, and is just really thankful that the community was able to come together and assist her. Next slide.
So what are the remaining needs? I think one, in addition to having a solid exit strategy of affordable housing and supportive services in that housing, which we would be remiss if we didn't thank you and congratulate you for some of the work that you're already doing to help make it easier to develop affordable housing in our community. We also need to make sure that we're addressing the needs of the unsheltered and literally and chronically homeless households as well. So first, mitigating siting challenges in advance. So as you all stepped up and were able to help donate or collaborate to provide a location, we continue to face that challenge of having people outside, funding to support shelter, providers ready to serve our houseless individuals, and no building in which to do it. That continues to be a challenge. We need to be continuing to identify locations that can serve for emergency shelter now, during the public health crisis, during the winter, during severe weather, and then we are still in need of a full-time year-round emergency shelter for single adults in Washington County. We are also needing to engage in preparations for the winter shelter right now. So winter is shockingly not that far away. And generally the season starts up in November. And we are currently in a situation where we're still looking for buildings in which to provide emergency shelter. Faith communities are continue to be not available. Having folks move from place to place is not really an option. We continue to face siting issues. And then we are not, we're not going to be able to shelter and house everybody that we are currently engaging with right now. We continue to need to support street outreach so that we can engage with folks who are unsheltered right now, that we can continue to stay in contact with them, monitor symptoms, ensure their health and safety, providing day shelters where people can go to access phones, computers, to access services, and then harm reduction efforts to support the health and safety of the unsheltered populations. I think Kim has some closing words for us tonight. So there are no more slides, but please take it away, Kim.
Thanks. So we would love for you to read the report that was sent. It's a longer version of everything we've just said with some more details, including some more stories. We can't thank you enough. And Catherine and I reached out to Felicita, and immediately she said, let me get on this, contacted the board, and you guys came back with an absolute yes. So thank you so much for that. And then I also wanted to thank Julie. Working with her was a breeze, and she made it easy for us to have access to the building and be able to serve our friends in really critical ways, life-saving ways. So a huge thank you to you all for your support and how you participated in the success of these extension shelters.
Thank you so much, Catherine, Pat, and Kim. I was really touched getting to read this in my board packet, and it's great to hear the success stories. Any quick comments or questions from my colleagues? Looks like Felicita's got her hand up.
Hi there. Thank you so much. Full disclosure, Kim and Catherine are my friends. So these are wonderful leaders in the community. Pat, I don't know if we've met or not. I apologize, but thank you for your wonderful work. And my version of events is a little bit different because I first called Doug and I said, Doug, I think we should do this. This is aligned with our values. And Doug said, absolutely. So thank you to Doug and all his leadership that trickles down and the values that guide the organization. I do have a question, but there's no way it can be answered now. So it's more of a reflection exercise for our wonderful community leaders. I guess I'm wondering in the future, as we build, not saying this is happening tomorrow, next year, but when we think about building like our next recreational center, our next rec aquatic, what are things that you would want any recreation center, any, community center to think about when they also are a community asset and want to be utilized in a situation like this? Obviously, hope we never have anything like this again, but I really do consider it our duty as a government entity to engage in this type of work when we can. And this was a perfect opportunity. And it was our absolute pleasure and honor, and huge thanks to Julie and all the staff. So something for y'all to maybe think about and get back to us for the future. And I'd be curious too, I think about, Hillsboro's building a new rec center, and, there's things happening around the region, especially as our population increases. So how can we make sure that spaces can be utilized for lots of different things, like in an emergency? So just something for you to ponder and get back to me on, and we can have a fun discussion. But thank you all so much for your work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Felicita. Tia?
Thank you.
Can you hear me now? So I did go through most of the presentation that was sent in our board package, and I just what I'm gathering from the charts and everything was that you guys mostly do individuals, it seems, because it doesn't seem like there's that many children, and I know Beaverton School Districts has a huge thing of houselessness kids, and so I was wondering what support you guys know of, or is there an even more need for support for whole group families and for these children?
That's a great question. So there is a full-time year-round youth shelter that operates in Washington County. It's located in Hillsborough. It serves youth from throughout the county, and that's operated by Boys and Girls Aid Society. And there is a family shelter network that consists of 3 full-time year-round, five total full-time year-round shelters for families. The severe weather shelter system does serve adults or youth over the age of 18, and I think there were 14 or 15 youth that actually accessed the severe weather extension as well. In addition to that, there is a lot of case conferencing and a lot of supports that wrap around families and children moving from homelessness into housing. Still not enough. We continue to have wait lists for all of the full-time year-round shelters as well, which I think speaks to that need for day shelters, street outreach, and then Felicity's great question about how community centers can support this population. And I would say, just as an initial thought to that question as well, Felicita, just some of the things that the THPRD is already doing, like making your showers available for folks who are unsheltered in Beaverton, for just off the top. But yeah, we'll continue to think about that.
So just to follow up on that, so as Catherine said, there's those resources for families, which isn't enough, but they are there. There is currently no shelters for single adults. So that's the reason that it was so important for us to put things in place. The severe weather shelters are only for 90 days during the coldest months of the year. So that's why it was so critical to have these extension shelters for our single adults, because it was the only option.
Perfect. Thank you. And then my second question is, I know the winter shelter season is coming. When does that run through, or what months?
So it is December 1st through the end of February, sometimes early March, depending on the 90 days.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you guys for all the work that you've done, and I'm so glad we were able to help out just a little bit that we could.
That was actually, it was huge. I can't undersell it enough. Having access to that building meant that I think it was 30 more people per night were able to be sheltered that otherwise would have been unsheltered during this pandemic, and that is huge. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much. All right. And Heidi and Tia, anything before we move to our next agenda item? Or I mean, Heidi and Wendy, I'm sorry.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to thank Pat, Catherine, and Kim for your work on this, and our team, our staff as well. It's really powerful to see the partnerships at play here, and how we can support our community outside of what we think of as parks and recreation. There's more to it than just parks and recreation. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Ashley, this is Wendy, and I just echo my fellow board members' response to this. This is a huge problem. Kudos to the people who go the extra mile to make these situations get better. As a community, there's a lot we have left to do. So thank you very much for what you are doing, and we are very happy to have contributed what we did.
Thank you. Thank you for taking time with us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. And our next agenda item is audience time. So I'm going to toss it over to Doug to start, and then we will have Tia read onto the record the public testimony emails that we received. So Doug.
Thank you, Ashley. I just wanted to comment that we did receive some correspondence today regarding Cooper Mountain, the regional park, concerns with some of our patrons who live at the south end of the district. And in communication / cooperation with Metro, we made the decision to close the park for the day. And in looking out my window here, I think it was a good choice. It's a little different out there, and anything we can do to support. Obviously, the Park District has taken a lot of different measures operationally for our maintenance staff, not using any light gas-powered equipment, no mowing, and we've to date had minimal damage, just some tree damage out there. So we appreciate the residents' concerns voiced, and we acted, I think, in safety first, as always.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you, staff, for being so responsive. Tia.
Okay, so our first letter is from Shelley Signet. It said, last week I received a notice from Washington County saying the proposed development for a Chevron market on the southeast corner of Northwest West Union and 185th had been withdrawn. I then contacted the CPO7 chair to ask if they knew whether THPRD might be interested in acquiring the property, since it is basically a natural wetland area with old trees and a variety of wildlife, and is right next to the Rock Creek Trail portion of the THPRD regional trail system. CPO7 corresponding secretary Mary Manso suggested I contact you to find out what interest THPRD might have in the property. To me, this seems like an opportune moment to step forward and buy the land so that the natural wetland area can be protected from development and be preserved for what it is. The land is an elongated triangle comprised of two lots, 1N119BC00500 and 1N119BC00600. Together, they total 1.21 acres. According to Washington County's 2019 records, they have an assessed market value of $1,058,350. I hope you will consider acquiring this corner of land so it can become part of THPRD's regional trail system and remain a natural area. Thank you, Shelley Signet.
Thank you, Tia. Doug, would you like us to have a response after each or just at the end?
At the end is fine. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Tia, go ahead.
Okay, so the second one is from John Trin. Many positive health outcomes may result from more access to high quality affordable housing. Research has shown correlations between affordable housing and healthier development, fewer serious health issues, and improved quality of life. Those who receive affordable housing units in a safe and well-planned area can benefit greatly, as emotional, mental, and physical health issues only cause an additional burden on overtaxed healthcare systems and may make it harder for affected individuals to receive necessary healthcare services and follow suggested protocols. It is important to understand the need for additional affordable housing opportunities. We applaud THPRD's willingness to address its role in policy framework for system development charges, waivers for affordable housing development. We also hope THPRD can be a catalyst to encourage other departments and areas within the Washington County to address SDC and provide waivers to facilitate more affordable housing within our communities. It is also important to note that there are many aspects of our individual's identity of which race is just one. A person from a community of color may also be a part of one of the other communities one identified with. People with disabilities, rural communities, families with children, low income, immigrants without documentation, people experiencing homelessness, and therefore have distinct experiences related to the intersections of those identities. For instance, people of color who have disabilities may experience discrimination based on both of these aspects of their identity. Policy solutions that seek to address these challenges should be co-created with communities of color in order to be responsive to their needs and wants. Regards, John. Okay.
Great. And I think Janine will certainly integrate in her discussion with regard to SDCs later on the secondary testimony. The primary testimony with regard to the property over off of West Union 185th. It's a property the Park District has looked at before. We're certainly happy to have more board discussion in an executive session format, but the short end is a portion of it is developable. There is some value there, and our primary charge right now when we're looking at natural resources is opportunity to connect wildlife corridors, and this isn't truly a connector. We may end up with it anyway, should it get developed. As time goes on, we'll see.
Okay, I have one more letter. Regarding THPRD SDC discussion. This is from William Allen. My name is William Allen, and I am the Housing Operations Director at a local mental health nonprofit, Luke Dorf, Inc. And I want to thank you for taking my below comments into consideration as you work to finalize your system development charge methodology. A major piece of our mission is the development and operation of affordable housing within Washington County, and in particular, the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District. We recently completed the construction of the Clover Court Apartments, a 6-unit that serves individuals who have suffered from mental wellness issues and chronic homelessness. A lack of major SDC waivers on this project contributed considerably to the overall budget, requiring additional time and resources for us to balance the financing on the project so it can move forward. As with all affordable housing projects, financing and funding acquisitions is one of the major barriers to new development. And any cost area that can be reduced or mitigated increases the ability for nonprofits such as ourselves to approach new projects to serve the most vulnerable in our community. Developers who seek to build new housing to meet the needs of our community review many cost assumptions, SDCs being a primary factor. While THPRD provides highly attractive services and facilities, this of course comes at a cost. Historically, that cost has been pushed many affordable housing developers to build elsewhere in the county, leaving families of modest means in the district with fewer options for stable affordable housing. We believe your proposed methodology will help provide a level of certainty and incentive for affordable housing developers that will allow a greater mix of homes to be built in the district. We have a significant shortfall of affordable housing in the region. As the economic engine of the state, Washington County is a great place to call home, and many households prosper, but for far too many, the housing market is highly constrained. In each of the past 5 years, nearly 50% of renters faced housing cost burdens, with communities of colors disproportionately affected. Despite coordinated efforts to address homelessness, it is estimated that on any given day, 1,000 people are homeless. And in the heart of THPRD, Beaverton School has the largest number of homeless students in the state. Housing insecurity adversely impacts health, school, and work, with higher rates of chronic disease, depression, school absenteeism, and dropouts. We truly appreciate THPRD's willingness to address its role in the housing ecosystem, and applaud the SDC methodology as it provides an opportunity to restore and enhance equity in demonstrable ways. But it will require a delineation of our shared values, not just targeting by income, size of home, length of affordability, but also by requiring a clear path to ensure access to these new homes by communities of colors with the cultural specific and responsive services needed to promote stability and success. Thank you for your time and consideration on this subject. We look forward to continuing discussions around housing equity and the development of affordable housing within our community. Best regards, William Allen.
Thank you so much, Tia. That is all we had for testimony tonight. So we are going to move over to board times. We do need to talk specifically about committee liaison updates, so I would like to get to that. But if anyone has like a 30-second to 1-minute update they would like to give before we do that, please feel free. Felicita?
Yes, good to challenge me. 1 minute, cut me off, okay? One, I wanted to just say, I think this might be touched upon later, but I sat in on the Talking Walls Committee. Major kudos to Lulu and to Holly. They're going to be so amazing. They're beautiful. I'm so excited, and I'm looking forward to the reveal. And then I just wanted to throw out, I had emailed my peers and a lot of other elected peers about a webinar regarding participatory budgeting. And I acknowledge everyone's really busy right now, and it was during the workday, which is not terribly accessible. But I just wanted to share that I'm committed to learning more about this, this idea, this system of engaging the public in budgeting. And I know we are not in a position right now to be throwing out a bunch of new ideas and starting new initiatives. That being said, it's very much aligned with our values, and I'm hoping next year to submit maybe a parking lot item. And I encourage my peers to learn about it because it's really cool, and I know it's very aligned with the values of my peers. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you hit 1 minute on the nose. Heidi?
Okay, 30 seconds, hopefully. Doug and I have been working on trying to figure out how we can partner with our PCC Rock Creek partners to gain access to the fields. And so that is an ongoing effort as PCC is on complete campus shutdown at this point in time, but we'll continue to see how we can partner with them to hopefully have those fields accessible for us to use in the next few months.
Great, thank you, Heidi. Okay, oh, Tia?
We're doing liaison stuff, right? Or are we waiting for that? Oops.
Yes.
Okay, so for my liaison stuff, the programs and events did meet, and Holly is now our staff liaison. So we miss Sharon a lot, but it was great to get the group together, and we just basically talked about the community psyche fund that Washington County has given us, and I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, it was about 400,000. And so our staff is doing amazing work with creating just programming that will keep our community hopefully engaged and just create that mental health and ability to somewhat connect in this trying time. They've done amazing work already so far with events like Chalk on the Block and Rock the Block, just to bring a little bit of upbeatness to our communities. But they have great ideas that are coming through, like drive-in movies and Halloween trick-or-treat. So I just want to give kudos to our staff for working so hard, for being innovative for what we have, for working towards getting this grant, and being able to provide whatever we can for our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Tia. Wendy, any updates from you?
Hi, yes. I'm trying to make sure. Yep, I think everything's on. So I wanted to report in terms of advisory committees. The Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee did meet in August, and the next meeting is September 16th. We thanked John and Brenda for their great work as staff liaison with the committee, and welcomed Keith Watson, who will be moving forward with the Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee. There's a lot of discussion. Ashley, you'll be happy about this, dog park statistics, and some of the things that we can do moving ahead. Part of the group, the advisory committee itself, is going out individually to take a look at different potential sites to see where else we might have these kinds of either runs or parks. So that's an ongoing piece of work with the Parks and Facilities Committee. Secondly, the Pension Advisory Committee met a couple of times, and we dealt with things like, as a matter of fact, there's a resolution on tonight's consent calendar for the 457 plan, and that's one of the discussion points that we had. And we also had the quarterly defined benefit pension committee meeting. So again, I want to give great kudos to Lori and to Christine for their work on this committee. We're in great hands because of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Wendy. Very excited about the dog parks. I was talking to some patrons over the weekend, and they were saying how well loved the Schiffler Park dog run is. So I'm grateful to hear about more. So quickly, I just wanted to touch base with you all on our board liaison positions for the year that we have now started, the fiscal year we've now started. First, just kind of get a feel if everyone is comfortable keeping their same committee appointments that we have currently. Heidi?
I want to go back to liaison updates real quick, because I do have two committees I didn't speak to. So if I may, real quick.
Yes.
Just really quickly, with the Tualatin Hills Park Foundation trustees, we had a meeting August 19th, and I want to recognize the folks who are our new executive committee leads. So Mike McMurray will be our chair for the next year, Jennifer Burrows our vice chair, and Cedric Boucher our treasurer. Many thanks to Randy Sell for leading as chair for a couple years now, or a few years. And aside from that, we are continuing to work on our strategy to continue to build our legacy circle and to build our funds to address our Access for All initiative. In addition to that, with the Nature and Trails Advisory Committee, I was not able to attend that meeting. They met on August 26th for some updates to discuss the Natural Resources Functional Plan and e-bikes on trails. And again, thank you, Bruce, for your leadership with that committee, and to Sherry, who is our chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah, just kind of wanted to see how you're all feeling about continuing on, recognizing that Felicita was not assigned a liaison position for the last fiscal year since she served as our chair. And so was kind of considering throwing out an unofficial liaison committee that maybe Felicita could be our first to serve on. And that would be kind of like a local liaison or local government liaison. So checking in with Beaverton City Council and Washington County. This would be something for us to try out this fiscal year to see what might be like a regular interval touch point where the liaison member would touch bases with the chair of the county commission and with the president of the Beaverton City Council and talk about our, how we work together and whatnot. And so I would love if Felicita is comfortable with that could be something where she could actually define, right, what's the appropriate level of contact. And it may be a more unofficial liaison committee, right, but it would still be part of our rotation. So Felicita, you have a thought on that?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing this has been super at least it's supposed to be super intentional, right? Because what we want is to build stronger relationships with our local jurisdictions. Very intentional with the city of Beaverton and with the county. So just as an example, me being my eager self as usual, I listened in on the city council meeting yesterday and was like, okay, what are the things that I would want to share with my peers? Now, in this particular meeting, there wasn't a ton that necessarily related to parks. If we had more time, and maybe I just type it up and send it to you, there are some things that are very interesting happening in the community. For example, that they're gonna hire their interim city manager soon-ish, and then they're recruiting for boards and commissions, which I know is something that we're not able to do this year, but something that we could encourage folks to engage in, right? So just as an example, and again, this is, very much being morphed in the moment, but the intention is really to build stronger relationships with our elected leaders. And I do want to ask Ashley, do you have a liaison assignment that I should take over?
I'm on the audit committee and I'm more than happy to stay on it. We were actually meeting tomorrow, so yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm really happy to do whatever. I'm also happy to be like a sub for people when it works with my schedule. So anyways, I'm all ears.
Great, thank you. Tia, I just wanted to check in, see if you wanted to add anything. I didn't know if the hand was just still up, but feel free to jump in.
The hand was just still up. Sorry. I'm fine with keeping our liaisons as is.
Okay, thank you. Heidi.
I would suggest, and I don't know how it's been in prior years, but I know that I personally, and for my knowledge base serving the district, would love to see a shift between liaison appointments every so often. And I'm happy to, if somebody's really interested in the Nature and Trails or the foundation, but I would like to see us on some type of rotation. I don't know what that is, so just putting that out there. I'm happy staying with whom I'm with and assigned to at this point, but just a thought.
Yeah, thank you. Felicita?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I totally agree with Heidi. I think, we should all try to do at least a couple committees during our terms. I think one thing for me that was really helpful is that I served on the foundation for 2 years. And that's just one example, because I felt like the first year I was just learning a ton. And then the second year I was like, okay, now I can try to figure out how to be helpful. But I kind of think 2 years max is my personal opinion. But I completely agree with you, Heidi, that we should be, we want to learn all the pieces, right? That's the role anyway. So I complete agreement with that. And if there's people who wants to move around, let's talk about it.
Yeah. Tia?
I'm totally fine with that too. I just do want to say that this being my first year or whatever, we did have 6 months with COVID and whatnot where we weren't really doing anything. And so us extending, the liaisons for the people we just met, I think it would be good to maybe stay on another year just so that we're just now starting to develop some kind of relationship and familiarity with the newcomers who were on the advisory committees, and at least for programs and events, we also have a new staff liaison. So just moving forward, thinking about just consistency or giving it another year would be good, considering we haven't really had a chance to do much with our groups, or at least I haven't.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, right? And we're considering also when we asked if any committee members wanted to continue for another year, is that lost time, right? As a group. So I also think that consistency for another year, if everyone is comfortable with that, I think could be really beneficial. Wendy?
Thank you. I agree with Tia. I think that we, Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee is in a similar situation in that we have a new liaison, and he'll be stellar, but he is new. And secondly, we have not had meetings and have not done the kinds of things that we were able to do previously with advisory committees. So for me, I'm very happy staying with right where I am with the two committees I have for this year. And I think that, I do agree that moving around probably after a second year is a really good idea. So thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Heidi, are you comfortable with that, of like the 2-year rotation?
Absolutely.
Do you feel like
Yeah, that's not a problem at all. I just wanted to put it out there. If anybody's wanting to switch things up, I'm happy to talk about that, but 2 years sounds sufficient for me. And I think I had a little more time with Nature and Trails because I was on that committee prior to coming into this role. So it's great. We have a plan moving forward.
Okay, wonderful. And Felicita, would you like to serve in this local government liaison role, and we'll kind of define what that role is as you feel it out?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And if, offline or via email, folks want to throw out suggestions. I mean, like I said, I kind of tried it out yesterday, and my thought was I would send you the notes, and there wasn't anything that was particularly park specific, but there were certainly things that were community specific that we should be aware of. And I definitely, like, the city council meets at least 3 times a month, I think, sometimes 4, and then county commissioners meet also just as often. So I definitely can't go to every meeting, but they do record those sessions, so that makes it really accessible. So I promise to do my best, and we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah, and I do not think that the expectation should be that this role should attend or even watch all of those meetings. I think that that's a lot, but I think that maybe that's where finding, like, is there a touch point with the chair of each of those boards might help, right? So that you are not having to watch or attend hours and hours of meetings, and might find a better balance, and also get closer to the point of like, how are we going to work together? So totally would love to just see how that evolves for you and what you recommend. And yeah, if anyone has other ideas, feel free to send them Felicita's way as she navigates this. So, okay, thank you all so much. Our next agenda item is the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
This is Tia. So I move that the board approve the consent agenda as submitted.
I second.
Thank you. Jessica, is this a roll call vote?
It is.
Okay.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Felicita Monteblanco,
Yes.
Tia Ping,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer-Brigg.
Yes. Thank you so much. Our next agenda item is unfinished business. So we will head over to our presenters on the resolution adopting the Vision Action Plan. So Holly.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Holly Thompson, and I am your communications director, and we are so pleased to be here with you this evening. We're here to talk about what we've been working on for the past 18 months that you have been a big part of as well. And, I wish we were together celebrating, but it's a big accomplishment, and we're really proud to deliver the Vision Action Plan for your consideration this evening. Next slide, please. So you will be hearing from several of us. We have 13 members of our Visioning Task Force, and 2 of them are here tonight to present to you. Kanthi Karumbanathan and Nadia Hassan from the Visioning Task Force, as well as Jaspreet Chahal, who has been our project lead and done an absolute amazingly job on this project. And we have just been so blessed to have Jaspreet as our lead on the Visioning project. And I want to say, all of our VTF members are fabulous, but Kanthi and Nadia went to a lot of these events. They have a lot of personal stories to tell and just amazing contributors to the project. And we're so pleased to be able to co-produce and share the visioning action plan with you tonight. Next slide, please. So just a quick refresher on the background. All credit goes to the board of directors. The vision action plan was an idea from the board. The board wanted to better understand community priorities. It's everything that you've talked about in your discussions so far this evening. It's clear how much community engagement matters to our board of directors, how important it is to listen to the voice of the people that we serve. And that was really a guiding force to this project. As well, it was important and a guiding force that we have cross-cultural and diverse engagement. We were challenged not to just connect with the people who know THPRD well, but the people who haven't discovered us yet, to understand what those barriers are and to understand how we remove those barriers and truly serve the beauty and the diversity of our full community. And it was also important that the project be co-produced. This has not been a staff-driven project by any means. Every step of the way, our VTF members have been with us. They've been challenging us. They've been telling us better ways to engage. They've helped produce everything that we've done every step of the way. And this really has been a beautiful model of co-production. Next slide, please. So just a quick reminder of our timeline. Jaspreet and I have enjoyed many a chuckle because as we mapped out the phases, I started in this role of communications director in mid-September, and by the end of the month had delivered a map of what I thought it would take to accomplish the visioning process, the phases. I was off by a couple of months. We had to push it just a little bit towards the middle, but it was time well spent to get the job done well and to get it done right. So this is kind of an overview of how we've spent our time, and you'll hear from all of us a little bit on each one of these phases. But by and large, we really met the mark of where we envisioned that we would be in the project. Next slide, please. So the first phase was getting started. I want to acknowledge that when we started the visioning process, the communications department was very small. So we had to rebuild and hire. We were so lucky to find the right person, Jaspreet, who is amazing and has the spirit of a community engagement specialist and this amazing talent that was just a perfect fit for this project. We also to JLA Public Involvement to help us design the phases of the project and to work on some of our collateral engagement pieces, and they were pretty helpful. And then we also had to recruit the visioning task force, and it was really important that we find a group of people who truly reflected the community, who really understood that this was about capturing where people that we are serving are at, right? We're not representing our own views necessarily on the visioning task force. We're there to really have the responsibility to collect the input from the public and share that with THPRD. So I think we did really well there. So that's kind of a little bit of an overview of what we did through phase one. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jaspreet.
Good evening, board members, and thank you so much, Holly, for your kind words. My name is Jaspreet, and I serve as the district's community engagement specialist. And for the past year, I have been the project lead on the visioning project. First off, thank you for the opportunity to present and talk about this work tonight. A vital part of the preparation phase, as Holly mentioned, was to recruit volunteers to serve on the district's visioning task force, or the VTF, to lead the community engagement efforts. We received a total of 41 applications, and after conducting interviews, 13 were invited to serve on the VTF. The members were then appointed by the board at the time in May 2019. Collectively, the VTF brought together a group that is multi-generational, aged from retirees to high school students, multi-ethnic, and from different geographic locations within the district. This dedicated group brought together different perspectives and unique lived experiences to their commitment. To the right of your screen, you can see the geographical distribution of the members within the district boundaries. Their collective multilingual skills encompassed 7 languages, and at their very first meeting in May 2019, the VTF set an ambitious yet completely achievable goal of connecting with more than 10,000 people in 5 months. They also very quickly got to work together and designing and advising on outreach tools and strategies. And within a few weeks, the project team had trained the VTF members to conduct meaningful and intentional community outreach. Their approach focused on removing barriers and building trust through multicultural engagement. And each member signed up for multiple outreach opportunities. Next slide, please. For this slide, I'd like to invite Kanti Karumanathan to talk about the outreach and engagement phase.
The second phase of our plan was the outreach and engagement phase. For this phase, all of us VTF members brainstormed which events we would go to, and at every single event, there was always a VTF member present. At each of these events, we would ask questions such as, what do you want for the future of THPRD? Or what are your favorite activities to do with THPRD, and how can they be improved in the future? And a lot of times, these questions would build into a more organic conversation. Throughout this phase, we attended a large diversity of events. We attended culturally specific events, non-culturally specific events, children's events, focus groups, and so many more. At every event, there was always a different dynamic and a variety of ideas. For example, one event I went to was an after-school camp with elementary schoolers, and we got ideas all the way from building playgrounds on the moon to things like planting more trees in parks. Seeing all these largely different ideas and ways of thinking was really fascinating, especially when shifting between so many groups of people that had so many different perspectives to offer. Some people, well, a lot of people initially said that they loved THPRD and that they wouldn't change anything about it. But after some more conversation, they would come up with things that maybe didn't come to mind at first. Additionally, it was really amazing to see people building off of other people's ideas and adding on to things that they had already heard. Next slide, please. In just 5 months, we reached nearly 10,500 people, which was above our goal of 10,000 people. We collected over 12,500 ideas and went to 117 engagement opportunities. Of these engagement opportunities, more than 50% of them were non-THPRD events. And making sure that we talk to people outside of those who frequently use THPRD facilities was a key aspect of our plan. And in the end, we certainly accomplished that. Next slide, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nadia Hassan, and I am part of the Visioning Task Force. And as Kanti mentioned, we had gone to all of these events and gathered all of these 12,500 ideas. And what were we to do with all of these ideas? And so what we did is we partnered with JLA and identified 4 specific goal areas that all of the ideas fell into. And they are here on this slide, and I'll talk to you about 2 of them. One of them was the welcoming and inclusive team, of which I got to be a part of, which was an amazing experience. This team represented different groups within THPRD staff and the Visioning Task Force, and specifically focused on how our population here in Beaverton has changed and ensuring that we are welcoming all of our communities in our centers. The second goal area was around accessibility and safety, and this was more about financial access for students of families of different abilities, and also safety and ensuring that we've updated all of our different areas. And Kanti will share about the other 2 goal areas.
The third goal area, Play for Everyone, reflected the way that people and their pets move and interact with THPRD. This includes participation in classes, activities, exercises, and sports. And the final goal area, Preserving Natural Spaces, includes community ideas that envision opportunities for people to be in and enjoy nature. It represents comments and trails and also preserving our shared natural spaces and educational opportunities in nature. Next slide, please.
And then we moved into phase 3. So we had identified these 4 buckets and we created these action teams. And the unique thing about these action teams is that there were members from VTF, members from staff, and then different partner agencies that supported us in these conversations. In these meetings, we talked about the different ideas that came and talked about how we can continue to implement community input in how we move forward in this action. So we took those 12,500 ideas, identified 4 buckets that we mentioned on the previous slide, and came up with 108 best ideas. Next slide, please. Then we moved into phase 4, which was the community review portion. We took those 108 ideas and decided that we wanted to be multilingual. We identified 6 languages in partnership with our team and staff to make sure that access was at the front and center of our multicultural communities. And we invited the public to vote on their top 5 favorite ideas. Our plan was to get this survey out in as many ways as possible. We did have the COVID-19 pandemic come along, and so that shifted our goal. However, we still reached over 750 people with completed surveys, 146 of which were filled out by our youth. And to remind everyone, we started in phase 2 collecting data. We took that data, we hashed it, and then this phase continued to take on more data as well. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Nadia and Kanti. The outcome of this work has led to where we are today, the Vision Action Plan. The content in the plan is community-driven, it's validated by the responses to the Community Review Survey, and confirmed through the work of the Action Teams process. This plan is developed in many phases, the most visible parts being towards the end when it's taken shape in a way that can be used by many. Thousands of community ideas are neatly arranged around the overarching goal areas, and each goal area has a set of associated actions organized under themes which are paired with strategies for the Park District. Next slide, please. Over the next 2 slides, we wanted to share a few spreads from the plan itself. Here, I wanted to pause for a brief moment and reintroduce myself. As you all know, I'm just Preet, and I use she, her pronouns, but I'm also an immigrant, a person of color, an individual with a disability, working as a park and rec professional. I share this not because any one identity is more important than others, but because they each mold, shape, and inform my everyday experiences and interactions in the world around me. So when it came to developing this plan, we started with a simple question. What would a community-friendly, culturally inclusive, and forward-looking Vision Action Plan look like? And the answers we arrived at were, we wanted the content and narratives to be approachable with humanizing and simple language that shies away from technical jargon, is equitable, respectful, and retains public input, and can be understood by subject matter experts and community members alike. Next slide, please. We also wanted the document to mirror our diverse community, and we did this by intentionally choosing imagery and graphics that represent and capture the everyday experiences of this document's many audiences. Most importantly, we recognized that this approach would mean it'll be useful for staff, members of the THPRD community, and someone not familiar with the Park District. We also recognized it was critical to acknowledge the significance of the current moment and contextualize this plan against the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the project timeline and the work moving forward. Next slide, please.
Sorry, I was slow on the clicking. So where do we go from here? Now that the Vision Action Plan is ready for your adoption, and we hope you will vote to do that this evening, it really becomes foundational for Tualatin Hills Park and Rec. It really serves as our guiding light for how we need to think about, plan, strategize, and move forward as a park district. And, you know, I think we all know that this is a really challenging time, and we have seen unforeseen obstacle after obstacle. And there was a moment where I think individually and collectively, staff and VTF members have all kind of struggled with, what does it mean to deliver the Vision Action Plan at this time? And our conclusion was, it's actually an incredibly powerful time to deliver the plan to the board, because at a time where you're going to have some tough choices to make about how we rebuild, what's most important, where we will invest our resources moving forward, you have no better product than to look to the community vision document to understand what's most important to the people we serve. And that's really what this process has been about, holding ourselves accountable to ask the question, what matters the most, and then ensuring that we do the work to implement that information that we have received. So what we will do practically from here is, as we move forward to update functional plans and other implementing tools that come along, they will have to reference back to this vision action plan. They will have to speak to the 4 pillars. They will have to demonstrate how they're carrying those ideas forward. The vision actions are intentionally written very broadly. They capture the intent and the spirit of what the public said was most important, but the tactic and the strategies have been left to be flexible so that we can move forward and implement those ideas in a way that makes sense as we move forward. And remember, it's also a long-term vision. So one of the things that I hear often is, oh my goodness, how are we going to pay for all of this at once? Have we set expectations too high? And I always take a deep sigh and I just smile, because remember, this is meant to be a plan that guides us for the next couple of decades. So it really is about knowing where we are today, thinking about where we want to be in the future, and planning the steps along the way to get to the right landing zone. We will hold ourselves accountable. We will share with the public on an annual basis and with the board of directors our progress towards our vision actions, and we will speak to these 4 goals and these 4 pillars in all of our work moving forward. I want to invite Nadia, because I think she had some closing comments as well, to pop on and speak. And then when Nadia is done, I do want to share with the board that we have 3 minor edits that we'd like to bring to your attention before your vote and consideration. So with that, I'm going to first turn it over to Nadia for some closing thoughts.
Thank you, Holly. I want to say that this has been such an enlightening process for me. So I want to give a special thanks to the board of directors for helping build this plan. It's been so exciting to see the investment and interest in community input. And it feels so exciting and refreshing to be a part of this community. And I want to give a special thanks to our visioning task force members. These folks, we showed up at events. It was really hot sometimes. It was really windy sometimes, but we were out there, and we were out there because we wanted to hear from as many people as we could to hear about what they wanted. And so when we stand behind this plan, I feel so excited, because I can tell you that we talked to people as young as 5 and as old as 80 to make sure that we were building everyone's ideas and everyone's thoughts. And so personally, I want to thank you. Thank you to the board of directors. Thank you to the VTF members. And most importantly, thanks to our staff and communities for continuing to show up. So I really hope that you know how much we appreciated this, but also how excited we are for this work and committed we are to helping this work move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadia. And I want to echo our love and appreciation to our VTF members. We will, when we're able to, we're going to hold a gathering to celebrate the VTF. We've already promised them that, and we will be inviting the board of directors to do that as well, so you can share your thanks with them in person when we can get together. So I do want to point out that we did have some feedback from board members, and we thought all of the comments we received were right on. So we are recommending a couple of small changes to the vision action plan. On page 33, it is one of the pages where we speak to this period of addressing systemic racism. We used one of the images from the talking walls, and Felicita, you are correct. You're going to get to see those images later this evening. And we got a suggestion of, could we credit the student artist who the mural was created by Jenny Ping and supported by her mentor, Edward Holmes. So we will be adding that credit to the vision action plan. And then on page 49, under the Preserving Natural Spaces goal area, regarding preserving and expanding natural areas, actions 85 and 86, we had the suggestion to take a look at the language there, go back to the action team notes and records, and see if we had captured it to our best ability. And when we went and did that, we found that we definitely agreed the language could be amplified, and that's what we've done. So it meets the same spirit of the language that you have before you in your draft, but we definitely amplified the importance of prioritizing, preserving the expansion of wildlife habitats, green belts, and animal corridors, the importance of being dedicated to a healthy ecosystem, saving our big trees, and being mindful of future development. So that language has been tightened up to be more reflective of what we felt was coming out of the action team, and we feel better about that tweaking of that language. So with that, I think the next slide says questions, and we are open to questions or comments from the Board of Directors.
Thank you all for that presentation. Felicita.
Yes, my goodness. Oh my, this is so amazing and beautiful. And I mean, it's been so fun to be part of the process from day one. And I know so many of the board members engaged by actually coming to events or going to events and joining the amazing visioning team. And I remember being challenged in the best way to like not give an answer of like, if someone says like, well, we need dog parks, the answer isn't, the response shouldn't be, well, we have those already. Instead, it should be to dig and understand like, what are the barriers and why does this, what is calling to this person and what are we missing? And so thank you to Holly for making me better. And thank you to the visioning team for all your hard work. This is just an amazing document that will lead us into the future. Question for, I think, Holly. And she probably knows this question's coming because I've been talking about it forever, but I'm just curious around, we had talked forever ago about like values, our values as an organization. Not to say that we don't have values, but we don't have much written down regarding to what our values are. I'm wondering, to me, there's certainly a lot of that within this document, especially that ties to the goal areas. We value natural resources, we value accessibility. I'm curious, like, where do we go from here in terms of shaping our values as an organization?
Your question is great, and no, I did not predict you would ask that question. So you got me.
Sorry. We can talk about it later, or we can do some brainstorming. Or sorry, I genuinely didn't mean to put you on the spot. But it's something that I've been thinking about, and I know that you and I have talked about for a while. So, and I know we should close this book and feel celebratory. So I don't want it to be like I don't want you to feel like you're on the spot. So sorry, Holly.
No, it's totally fine. I think the 2 points that I would make is you're absolutely right of the connection of whatever values exercise we go through. And I think, that's led by the board of directors and by Doug figuring out how you want to do that. The visioning has to be an incredibly important input to that. And the second thing that I would just underscore is that those 4 goal areas really need to become pillars that we talked about our work with the community. There's we do so many things, and it's such a blessing to work for an agency where people love and value the services that you are providing the community and see them as so vital. But those 4 pillars provide us the framework to talk to the public about this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and this is how we're going to deliver on the things that you've asked. So I definitely want to see us really integrate those 4 pillars moving forward in our big picture communications.
Thank you. And thank you, Kanthi and Nadia.
Heidi.
I'll just keep it short and sweet. Thank you so much. Everything Felicita had to say, and really especially to the committee members, the volunteers. We cannot do this work without community volunteers. So thanks to each of you, and to Jaspreet and Holly and your team for all of the hard work. It's great.
Tia.
I just also want to echo everything that Heidi said. There is so much work that went into this, and there are so many things you had to filter through and to make it into this beautiful document that is just readable and put in layman terms and shows our values. I know it is reflective of the board's values, and so I'm super excited to have these 4 pillars that we can move forward with. And I echo everything that Holly said about this is the perfect time to bring it as we are looking at what we need to invest in, our financial burdens, and this will definitely help us prioritize things that our communities want. And so I'm just so glad that this was done, so glad that we will have this vision for the next 10 years or so. And I just want to say thank you. And our staff is amazing, our community is amazing, our board is amazing, and we just do amazing stuff. So happy. Thank you, everybody.
Wendy.
I just wanted to say thank you very much to the entire group for bringing this forward. And you know, it's interesting, this has been a very strange year, but had we had to go out and do our outreach this year, we would have been in a world of hurt. We were lucky we got to do it last year and use this year for the time to pull it all together. So in an odd way, it worked out. But I want to give great kudos to Holly and her entire team for this, and to the volunteers who did so much work. It was a pleasure to work with all of you, and I look forward to seeing what we do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Nadia and Kanti, and Jaspreet and Holly for the amazing presentation. Our board has our retreat next month, and I am really looking forward to taking that with us into that conversation as we look ahead. So thank you so much. Are there any motions from my colleagues?
This is Felicita. I move that the board approve resolution number 2020-16, adopting the visioning action plan, including the edits to the plan that were discussed this evening.
And this is Tia. I will second it.
Thank you. Jessica?
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Tia Ping,
Yes.
Felicita Monteblanco,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer Prigg.
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. We are a little behind schedule, but I recognize it might be time for a quick break. So if we could take a 3-minute bio break, get up, stretch your legs, and I'll see you at 5:58 to move to the next agenda item of SDC methodology update. Okay, I'm hoping everyone is back. Tia and Wendy, just checking if those are hands remaining up from visioning.
They are down.
Okay.
Sorry, yes, it's going down.
No apologies needed. Just want to make sure before we move to SDCs and turn it over to Jean.
Good evening, and thank you, Janine Rostad, your planning manager. I will apologize in advance if you hear any noise. When you gave the break and I stood up, I had 2 dogs that thought it was feeding time. So, Jessica, if you can go ahead and advance. So this evening is one of your last presentations on the SDC methodology before we finalize the report. We need feedback on a few outstanding issues with regard to affordable housing. So what I'm going to do is give you a brief update of conversations with stakeholders. And actually that I'm going to weave throughout the presentation so that you know what the feedback was on a call that we had on August 27th. I had spoke with Sheila Greenlaw-Fink after the last board work session, and that conversation made me realize that while it's wonderful having those one-on-one conversations, giving the short turnaround, it was going to be more productive to invite all the affordable housing providers that have been involved to date into a conversation. So we had that call on August 27th. I will go over a revised sunset provision, review the impact of potential waivers. This is something that is continually being refined as we learn more about what can be coming down the pipeline. And then seeking your feedback on the 60% median family income waivers. The cap on waivers, a new thought of whether this should be a dollar cap or a unit cap. And then if we should be requesting application documentation, and actually the duration of affordability is another item of feedback. Then I just want to close this evening with a reminder of all that THPRD is doing in the affordable housing realm, that it's not just these waivers. So next slide, please, Jessica. I keep forgetting you have control. So given the feedback we heard from affordable housing providers and the board at the work session, we've simplified the sunset provision, and it's now just 3 factors that the waivers will sunset if and when we reach the cap, the adoption of a new methodology, and this is the change because before we had said 5 years or the adoption of a new methodology. As you may recall, we have to update our methodology every 5 years, but if done right, that can take years. So there could have been a lag. And of course, the hope of the community is that the board continue to provide waivers for affordable housing. So that's the simplification there. And of course, the board could always revise the affordable housing policy resolution. So any questions on the sunset provision changes? Not seeing any hands go up quickly, and of course there'll be time for additional questions at the end. So Jessica, if you can give me the next slide. So the affordable housing forecast, these numbers have not changed since the work session, but I show here also the multifamily rate, which most affordable housing is multifamily. But also what we've been learning is there is a potential project of affordable housing that will include senior housing, and that's a little over, the cost per unit is a little over $2,000 less than the multifamily. So that reduces how much we may potentially be giving in waivers. So if you can advance, Jessica. So one of the questions is regard to the 60% MFI or medium family income housing. As you may recall, for the 30% MFI housing, the board did give us direction to give 100% waivers, include that in the policy. And we had attempted at the work session to to come up with this idea of potentially for the 60% housing, having incentives. Well, from the board discussion, then the conversations with Ms. Greenlaw-Fink and the rest of the stakeholders, what it came down to is that that was going to be a very complicated endeavor, and it's with changing boards, with potentially changing priorities, again, complicated for the board, for staff, and it also did not provide certainty. So what resulted was circling back to our original proposal of giving a 50% waiver for 60% MFI housing. And before I seek your feedback on this, if Jessica, we can look at the numbers on the next slide. This chart puts together what the potential impact is if we both get the project with the senior housing, but also a project that potentially will have public amenities, which will get SDC credits. So if you look at the bottom right there, the 2.5 million and 2.6 million, that's those numbers represent the 2.5 the potential waivers with credits and the senior housing, and the 2.6 is assuming that there is no senior housing. This is our best case scenario. And in this, with a $3.5 million cap, we would be able to cover these. And of course, there may be additional affordable housing. You know, I try to be the optimist. If the federal government comes up or the state comes up with additional funding for affordable housing. So I'm going to pause here and would like your feedback on whether you like the direction of providing 50% waivers for 60% MFI housing.
And just quickly, I would like to hear a quick affirmation or not from everyone. We're not voting on this, but I would like Janine to feel like we've given very clear direction today. So Felicita.
Yes. So thank you. Thank you, Janine, and thank you for continuing to be creative and thoughtful in this work and learning, becoming an expert in a short amount of time. So to answer your question, yes, 50% flat waiver for the 60% and below, to me, is the way to go for ease of the developers, for ease of for everyone, and it's still very much in alignment with our values.
Thank you. Yeah.
I had a question. So if I'm remembering right from our previous ones, if we were going to involve 50% of this 60 and lower, wasn't it supposed to be above 3? Wasn't it like 3.5 million or something? Where am I getting that number from?
That is actually on this. If you look on this slide, if you go to before the potential amenity credits, the 3.6 and the no collection fee, because what I've also done is, sorry, I forgot to mention this. County has indicated that it will not charge us any fee for waivers. We're negotiating $50 for waivers on standard credit products. The fee that is charged by the city and the county is 2.6%, and that's built into our methodology. So I've backed that out because if it's not being collected, it's not costing us. So really the range, assuming that or if there was no senior housing and no credit projects, the high end of that range is then just under 3.7 million. And yes, at the last presentation, you saw that as 3.8 because that included the 2.6%.
Okay. So now you're saying that our likely max would be 2.6 if there's no senior, or 2.7 if there's no senior.
But that also assumes that there is a development that has a public amenity and is getting credits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which we have potentially on the books already know of, and that's where we're getting that $1 million number from?
Yes, that is from a pre-application with the city for this project. Looking, and that 1 million roughly is actually just the SDCs that would be owed on that project. If that project moves forward, the amenities are likely to value more than that. So it's yeah.
Okay. Moving on to that, if that's the case and we're in that 2.7 million, then I would be fine with the 50% waiver. If we're heading up towards that 0.7 million though, I mean, with our financial burdens and all of that kind of stuff and all the things, I would be more hesitant to it. But if we're going to stick to that, because mostly from my vision was that we are also covering what we would pay out with those grants and stuff. And so once we hit that 3.7 million, we're not as covered from the potential grant money that we may or may not get, correct?
Well, a few things here. That the 3.7 is the max, and when we came up with 3.5, that was I worked with our grant specialist, who you're going to hear from next, to revisit our forecast. And at that point, we knew we were recommended for a $650,000 grant, so that part went up. But we did look, assuming that there might be for the next year or two, either more competitive grants or smaller pots of money. But then also took into account that there's the Metro bond. We have the local share of just shy of 9 million. Some of that will be used for SDC projects, but there's also part of the Metro bond, the trails. We hope to be in line to get money for building some trails, maybe a big bridge, and then potentially acquisition of both land for trails and natural resources. So that 3.5 was a conservative view.
Okay, perfect.
And if it's, sorry to interrupt,
no, go ahead.
But the other thing is, if you say yes to 50% of the 60 MFI, you still have the separate question of the cap. And how I'm going to frame the policy is there'll be a total cap, but we will pull out. So for the 30% housing, making sure whether it's a dollar amount or unit count, that those 30% have the priority, that we set aside some of that cap for those, so that what would be impacted would be the 60% MFI, but the housing most in need will get the waivers.
Okay, perfect.
Heidi or Wendy, questions or comments? Wendy?
Thank you. So I'm going to go back to my old saw of open space or public purpose space. And if we go for the proposal for 50% waiver, it does make it, it gives certainty, which I fully understand and I do support. But by going for that, do I up on the public space or space for public purpose, or is there enough to work that in? And I guess what I was thinking was, when I read the packet and we're talking about requests for the waivers and the suggestions for incorporating, some of the requirements from Metro Washington County and City of Beaverton, makes no sense to go outside those. It makes more sense to follow those as far as I'm concerned. But since we would be willing to do that, I think, then my question was, well, then why couldn't we then add another criteria that actually relates to our mission, which happens to be, in this instance, open space or space for public purpose? I have no desire to make life more difficult for affordable housing developers. Their life is already very complicated. However, I believe I would be strongly remiss if I did not insist that we need some recognition of the value of open space and space for public purpose. I do understand that many times the private areas and private space inside these developments is available. What I'd like to do is just make it available to the public. And I understand there are some issues with that, so we have to work through that. But I still don't want to give up on the open space or space for public purpose. So if you clarify that for me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
So this would not formally include that, but this whole process, both from a staff to our executive team, to you, the board, we built relationships, and what those relationships are enabling us to do is to be at the table early. These are relationships with the affordable housing providers themselves, as well as our jurisdictional partners. And the region has really rallied around. So does it guarantee us? No, but it gives us the opportunity to be at the table to see how it can work. With SUT, it worked. With REACH, we tried, it didn't work. With this new development coming in, it looks like it's going to work, and they heard our feedback, and in the next week or two, we're going to have another meeting to see updated plans. So that's one avenue. And then the second avenue, Wendy, which gets to your point on their private open, or not private open space, private community rooms, is in my conversation with Miss Greenlaw Fink, is there is private charitable money out there that as a government entity, we need a nonprofit partner to apply for those funds. Looking for the opportunities to form partnerships with affordable housing providers, to go for grants, to get money where we could offer services, whether it was exercise classes or what have you, in those buildings, in those facilities. I'm going to quote Ms. Greenlaw Fink that kind of action not only forms a great partnership and gives to these communities in needs, but it also shows these communities that there's a park district out there that cares about them. So those are two avenues we're looking at. It is more informal than formal, but I think those that have the land to provide open space are going to do it, but a lot of times these properties are tight.
Wendy, your follow-up question? Okay, Tia?
Sorry, I got one, not the other. Is there any way that we can track over the next, take the time period that you wish, whether it's a year or the 5 years, whatever, to see how these ideas work? I don't want them lost. I really like the idea of having private space working with nonprofits so that we can do exactly what you said with regard to showing the community at large and the community that we're working with what the park district can do for them and with them. So what I would really like is that if we can't craft it as a part of the actual plan, can we craft that we will monitor this idea and the public open space idea to see if it works, doing it gently. And
absolutely, and that can be included in our annual report to you on affordable housing in the district.
Okay, thank you.
Tia?
I was on mute, sorry. But if, for Wendy's point, if they were to create some kind of public space or amenity, they would still be able to qualify for SDC credits, right? Like potential amenity credits would fall into if they were able to provide something like that, correct?
Absolutely. And a lot of times for these size of developments, the credits will, with SEPA, it ended up that there was zero owed after there will be zero owed when we give them credits for the land and the amenities that they are building.
Okay. And then are they still, like, depending on how big their structures are, their units or whatever, they're able to still do both waivers, I guess, still get the 30%, 100% waivers they're, or are they able to double dip, I guess, in the SDCs? It's not like it's one or the other, correct?
Correct. But what happens a lot is after they get the credits for the improvements, there's nothing owed. If there was something owed, then yes, we would go to the 30% housing first, making sure they got 100% credit, and then the 50% credit for the 60%. It gets confusing.
Yeah. The only other thing that I would add, and I don't know how plausible it is for the 60 and lower, 50%, if we're trying to make it a little bit more stringent, is in a lot of these public testimonies, it says that, you know, it disproportionately affects BIPOC community, or there is a need for wraparound services and all of those kinds of things. So if there was, would it be difficult to put in some kind of criteria regarding, you know, if you're going to go a step above, you know, for this 50% waiver, we would like to see like either wraparound services, or that somehow it, you know, it's helping focus on veterans, or, you know, some disproportionately affected group or something like that, or would that just make the logistics too complicated?
It would be complicated, and it is something that the region is grappling with, and you're stealing my last slide. No, it was a wonderful conversation with Ms. Greenlaw, and this is something that is a challenge in the affordable housing industry itself, of how do they lease up. So that's why we have kind of the pass-fail and the next upcoming slide about looking at their documentation, but also wanting to see, hopefully, Metro do a affordable housing forum, so that providers can get together, and the local jurisdictions, and we can all learn from each other what's working to make sure that these community groups that have the greatest need are getting the housing. So it's something that I'm going to be a squeaky wheel with the region to see that such a forum happens. You know, if not Metro, then the county or the city. Worst case scenario is we do it, because these are conversations that need to be had. So I think that's the best place to have it. And then also looking at, I read the local implementation strategies, or LISs, for the county and the city for the Metro bond, and they are asking for a lot of information on equity and diversity as well.
Janine, sorry, one last question. Janine, do you know how many of the affordable housing units are going to be Metro versus outside of Metro predicted?
The majority of them are within Metro, so it looks like there is a total of 382 that are from the Metro bond. And then the city is predicting an additional 250 outside of the Metro bond, for a total of 632. So over half.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
Felicita?
Yeah, so I just want to highlight something kind of exciting, and this speaks to Wendy's values, I think, is that, so as someone who's worked on this since July 1st of 2017, I can tell you that in huge part to Janine's leadership, that how our jurisdiction is viewed as a partner to affordable housing developers has shifted magnificently. And people see us as an organization that wants to work with them, and that sees them as valuable, and sees that these individuals that they house are part of our community, of course. But Wendy, like, I'm positive that your values are completely aligned with the values of affordable housing developers. And I promise I get where you're coming from, and I'm not in disagreement. And I just want to say that I feel like the future is really bright, in huge part because of Janine, in huge part because we have a board that is proactively engaging with this community. We did not make this decision overnight. This has taken a year of discussions and reflection, and discussions with community leaders to build something that aligns with our values. So I feel really positive that, like, if there's open space, like, heck yeah, they're going to utilize it, and heck yeah, they're going to work with us because they have a relationship with Janine already, or they have a relationship with someone on the board already. So I mean, so much of our proactive work I know is going to reap benefits for the community. And so I 100% understand your concerns, Wendy, and they are valid, and 100% aligned with the work of our organization and what we are in charge of. And I know it's going to happen. I feel really good about it. So thank you, Janine, for all your hard work that's making this all a reality.
Thank you. Heidi, just quickly wanted to check if you are in alignment on the 50% waiver for all units, 31 to 60% MFI housing.
Yes, I am.
Great. I am in agreement as well. Janine.
Forgot to, I had it on mute because as I said, I have a few animals that are waiting for feeding time and are playing in the meantime. So my apologies for the noise. So the next question is, this came about when I went back to read Ben's methodology to see how much they included, and in talking with our consultant of how much detail we need in the methodology. Bend had a unit cap, and they aligned their unit cap with what the city of Bend was anticipating for housing and what the city of Bend was giving waivers for. So here's the two options. We can stick with a dollar cap of 3.5 million, and I'm just pushing the envelope a little, so my apologies if I ruffle feathers. But just remembering that if there is no senior housing and if all this affordable housing came to fruition, that the 3.5 million is 185,000 under what the potential maximum is. So, I mean, you could always consider what is the right dollar cap, or do we do a unit cap based on the predictions from the city and the county? When we spoke with the stakeholders, they were in favor of the unit cap. So I will open this up for, and actually looking at my notes, one more thing to consider, that we do an annual adjustment of our SDCs, which means that the charge can go either up or down, and that'll depend on what our economy does in the next 5 years. So I'll open it up for feedback.
Thank you, Janine. Tia?
I will say I would rather go with the dollar amount cap. Just knowing, or not, I don't know construction, but my husband's in construction, and how quickly construction costs and everything goes up and all of that kind of stuff. It just, it makes me feel a little bit better to have a dollar amount versus not knowing where our SDCs are going in the future or in the next 5 years, especially with an election coming up and the economy and COVID. It's just a more stable figure for me.
Felicita?
So for me, and I'm happy to get pushback, for me, I lean towards a number of units because I think that's easiest for the community to understand and to track. Now, all that being said, I imagine that the 5 of us plus Janine plus Doug are going to be tracking this like crazy over the next 5 years because we have a cap that we agreed to. We, of course, are having to make tough decisions as an organization, and that will continue for some time. And so I imagine that we're going to be watching this very, very carefully. And so I'm comfortable with the number of units because I think it'd be too complicated. I mean, not that our affordable housing community is very smart. I guess it's just having them to have to look at like, oh, how much money is left. I think units would be clearer. That being said, like I think I could go the other way if necessary. So thanks.
Heidi?
I agree with number of units. Yeah, I think that's, with all of the discussions we've had, I stand with that.
Thank you, Wendy.
Well, I thought about both of them, and just as a member of the public, I understand dollars and dollar limits a lot better than units and unit limits. When you tell me units, I really don't know what that means as a member of the public, I don't think. And so I'm kind of with Tia. I would rather see the dollar. I understand why somebody would want to use the number of units, but is there a way perhaps to meld the two and go ahead and do it based on a number of units, but for purposes of any communication that we do, that we say not to exceed X number of dollars, so that people don't think it's just units that suddenly become, gazillion dollar units. I think the dollars speak better to the public for that reason. So I don't know whether there's a halfway in between or not.
Tia?
I was just gonna say also, Janine, so if those amenity credits and senior housing credits come in and we max it at 632, doesn't that mean that we may be even underspending? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That so on the previous slide where I showed with the senior housing and the credits, it would be 2.6 million would be the value of the waivers, because there would be credits in that project and the senior housing having a lower SDC rate.
So essentially we would have, if we were to cap it at a dollar amount, we theoretically could create even more units for unplanned ones in the next 5 years, correct?
Either way you could, because under the scenario with the senior housing and the SDC credits, they would not be using affordable housing waivers. So whether it's dollars or units, they would not count towards that. Yeah, I had the same thought earlier in this process. And to Wendy's question, off the top of my head, if we had units but a not to exceed, I guess it's whichever was reached first. So in the scenario where there's open space that gets credits and we're at 2.6 million, I guess we could do both. I'm just trying to think if it would be more confusing, and honestly, it's not very clear to me off the top of my head, thinking on my feet, which I'm really not on my feet right now.
Wendy? Wendy, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. What I'm really looking for is transparency. So whatever works best, or whatever can be explained best, this, as we all know, is pretty complicated, and we've been following it. So for those who haven't been following it, I think anything we can do to explain and to be transparent, it's going to be incumbent upon us to do so. So I guess what I'm looking for is what's the easiest way to do that?
I think with the unit, it's very easy to understand. Jurisdictions, Bend did this way. I think it's a mix out there. But what we could do with the annual reporting, if you chose a unit, that we would take the SDCs for that year so that you can see a running total. And that again gets to your ability if all of a sudden there was more funding available for affordable housing, more land, and instead of 600 units, we were seeing the affordable housing market explode, you would have the chance to revisit your policy. So we can give you the reporting both ways, no matter what cap you choose.
Okay, then I don't have as much heartburn about going with units instead of dollars, as long as we can explain it well. Thanks.
Tia, did you have another question or comment?
So I just want to make sure I understand this, Janine. So if in that 632 units, then you're saying that the units that get the amenity credits and the senior housing would not be counted as part of those units?
Well, the units that wouldn't be counted are the ones that get the amenity credits. Senior housing just costs less.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. Janine, after reading all the information in the packet, I do think that number of units is the simplest and most predictable way for us to do it and cap on that 225, 30 MFI, 408, 60 MFI. And I just want to circle back on how the public might perceive it. The whole Metro bond was actually tied to number of units as well, right? So I think it will be a concept that is familiar for the public, that is, maybe a little bit tied in because they voted or whatnot about affordable housing, but the whole goal is to get a certain number of affordable housing units into the community. So I am in support of us moving forward with the unit cap.
So from what I heard, the policy you will see next month will have a unit cap.
I do believe you have enough board members agreeing on that.
Great.
Thank you.
So Wendy has her hand up. Before we move on.
Nope, down, thanks.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we addressed your concerns. Thank you. So Jessica, can you advance for me, please? So the last two questions hopefully are a little easier. As I stated that in my conversations with Ms. Greenlaw-Fink, when we were trying to figure out if we could do an incentive-based, we got to the issue of diversity and equity in both how these developments are constructed and then how they're leased up. And the local implementation strategies do address equity in that way, but what Ms. Greenlaw-Fink said, the more that we can get jurisdictions working together to get this information, because hopefully there will be some housing that is outside of the bond, the better the region's going to be. So we discussed, and the stakeholder group supported this. They all said that they have these items in place for their companies and for their developments. One is they would just provide us their organizational equity plan, their outreach plan for the development, who's the targeted tenants and how are they engaging with communities of color. And then what are their lease screening criteria? And this, I think, is just good to have as a pass-fail to make sure that it's being considered on their end, but it's also going to help us learn with what other folks are doing. We may be able to borrow some things from others. So that's one question. And then the second question is on the affordability duration, because this came from Justin at Wishcamper early in our conversations, that it's great that more affordable housing is being built, but part of the challenge is at the end of what is typically a 30-year, most of the region is requiring 60 years, making sure that affordable housing is maintained as affordable housing. So the question was 30 years or 60 years. All but one of the stakeholders said, let's go for the longer. Beaverton, as I put in your packet, they're looking at their investments in affordable housing as an investment in infrastructure, and they want to see the maximum. So Beaverton is requiring 60 years. The one dissenting stakeholders, they said, make it simple, follow what the state does with low income housing tax credits, LIHTC. And what's the state does there is for developments that get a 9% LIHTC, they have a 60-year affordability requirement, and then for the 4% LIHTC, they have a 30% requirement. So those are the last two questions for you this evening.
Colleagues, Felicita?
I 100% agree on the 60 years for sure. I think that's in alignment with the work that we want to do. And, you know, this decision, whilst it's something that we've been advocating for and something we've been learning for, this isn't easy. This is money that we're talking about. So I think, and I appreciate how the city of Beaverton is looking at it as infrastructure investment. So definitely 60 years. Regarding documentation, based on the feedback that we've gotten that you shared, Janine, I'm comfortable with these pieces. And I just want to make sure. So these are pieces that would typically be required of Metro funded projects. And we're now asking anyone who utilizes our funds to do the same criteria.
Correct. Yes.
So we're not inventing anything. We're not. Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you.
Tia?
I also like the documentation stuff, and then I am 60% for sure.
Thank you, Heidi.
Same here. Good on the documentation and 60 years as well.
Great. And Wendy? Wendy, you're on mute.
Sorry, got it again. In my experience living in other jurisdictions in previous years of my life, when there were 30-year or 20-year durations, they ended up being not maintained for the last 10 years of their lives. So they were slums, you know, like 20 years. I think they would be built differently if they knew it was a 60-year project and it was part of the infrastructure. So I agree with my fellow board members on that for 60 years. I'm okay on the documentation. I still would like to see something on public open space, but I'll just make that comment. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. I am in agreement on 60 years, as well as I'm in support of the documentation, especially since the other jurisdictions are requiring it. I think, you know, we would also like to see that they're committed to these things. So agreed.
Thank you. So the last slide, please, Jessica. So I just wanted to end on a positive note, and this was a reminder as I was reflecting back on, Felicita, thank you for reminding me that we've been having these conversations since 2017, and it's been a learning journey for all of us, and for me it has definitely been changing for me. I think I mentioned this at the work session, but I wanted to remind our community that we're doing more than just the waivers. Early next year, I'll be coming to you with a revised land, both acquisition and disposition policy. And in that, should we ever, oh, sorry, I have playing dogs over here. Should we ever be in a position to surplus land, that we usually do this as an RFP process, and one of the requirements could be use as a public purpose. And we could give extra points for affordable housing. Now, Wendy, you had a comment on this. And if the property were large enough, say hypothetically we had 10 acres, we could, as part of the sale, say that there had to be public open space, because we would be controlling that surplusing and the sale. So absolutely, we can make sure that our public purpose is still met. And then the other item we can offer is delaying closing. Carrying costs on acquiring property, which is usually done early, and it may take several years to get funding together for the construction. That can be a big burden for any developer, but particularly for affordable housing developers. So since we own our land outright, we do not have debt on it, we can delay closing so that those costs aren't incurred. Again, with the partnerships we have all formed over this process, being part of the early conversations will also help us ensure that where public open space is possible, we will get not only public open space, but public open space that really is a shining example of such partnerships. Gets into our partner opportunities of public amenities, but as I mentioned earlier, getting grants to potentially offer recreation services within the affordable housing development. And that can be something from in the community rooms to being able to expand our rec mobile offerings. Affordable Housing Forum, I've already mentioned that. So finally, when we do apply for grants, one of the things that many of these grants require and what we look to is getting grants to build amenities in our underserved communities. So I just will end with thanking the board for the time and effort you've put into this and also for the support you've put into this. It's been an honor to work on this. So that is all I have.
Thank you so much, Janine. We are going to move to the general manager's report.
Thank you. We're going to move along as quick as we can here. I've got Janine and Cindy will be providing the grant overview, and we'll try to tighten up our comments and because it's the time is moving along well.
So Janine Rustad again, planning manager. I just want to do a very brief introduction of Cindy Dower, who you did hear from at your last board meeting. She is our grant specialist, someone we are very fortunate to have on staff. She's been with us a little over a year. This grant report would typically be brought to you in August, but with COVID and the amount of work that Cindy was doing with the CARES Act funding, she was a little busy. Next year, this report will coincide also with your affordable housing update, so you can see the two together. Without further delay, then I will turn it over to Cindy.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here tonight to share an update on the grant program. I have learned so much in the last year with THPRD, and I've truly enjoyed getting to work to support the amazing programs and projects here. The report in your packet looks back at some of the grant program highlights and accomplishments for fiscal year 20 and looks ahead to fiscal year 21 and beyond. So I feel incredibly grateful and fortunate in my position to have inherited a remarkable grant strategy that was crafted in part by planning manager Janine Rustad. 5 of the key focus areas for that strategy are to establish a proactive approach to seeking grants, promote communication and coordination between departments, district advisory committees, and the Tualatin Hills Park Foundation, allow the district to maximize leveraged funds, increase efficiency around tracking and evaluation of grant-funded programs and projects, and encourage development of authentic relationships and partnerships for grant-funded programs and projects. And I'm proud to say that we made progress on each of these aspects of the grant strategy in the last year. And on the next slide, I'll tell you more about some of the grant highlights from fiscal year 20. So the grant program saw some really big wins this past year. We were recommended for a $650,000 Land and Water Conservation Fund grant for acquisition of new parkland in underserved area of the district in the southeast quadrant. This is pending federal review, but we anticipate an award. We also closed out 4 major active grants, including Waterhouse Trail Segment 4, Cedar Hills Community Park, Crowell Woods Neighborhood Park, and Commonwealth Lake Park Bridge replacement. We continued to increase collaboration with Tualatin Hills Park Foundation to implement the district grant strategy and explore opportunities to maximize leverage funds. We submitted 18 grant applications, exceeding the goal for the year, which was 13. And we engaged staff across the district in discussions on grant strategy and planning through the grant steering committee, as well as other meetings and communications. Next slide, please. So for fiscal year 21, work will focus on the following areas. We'll be updating district policies and procedures related to grants management, and we'll be updating the district grant strategy. We want to continue to increase coordination with advisory committees, friends groups, and the foundation to identify additional projects and partnership opportunities. We'll work with managers to develop 2-year department-specific grant plans so we can look ahead and move forward proactively. We'll increase the number and quality of grant applications, and will help facilitate cost recovery efforts related to COVID-19 funding opportunities. So while this is sort of the technical part of the grant program, I wanted to take a look at the fun part, which is the projects. And as I mentioned, this past year, we saw several major grant-funded projects reach completion, and I'll share some of those with you now. Next slide, please. So the first is Commonwealth Lake Park Bridge replacement. Commonwealth is an incredibly popular recreation destination in the district. A federal grant from the Land and Water Conservation Fund helped replace a 40-year-old bridge and plant almost 700 native trees and shrubs. Next slide, please. Over the past 2 years, the NEWT program, Nature Experiences and Workforce Training, served 80 Latino youth and engaged them in a variety of nature experiences. The main goals of the program were cultural equity, environmental equity, and economic equity. And I'm excited to report that we were awarded a second 2-year grant to continue this program through 2022. So you'll no doubt hear more about this in the coming months. Next slide, please. Waterhouse Trail Segment 4. This was a trail project that accomplished several goals, including adding 700 feet of new trail, replacing 200 feet of substandard boardwalk, and performing shoulder work to expand the width of the trail to align with regional trail standards. It also provided a critical link to Bethany Boulevard, and this was funded by a Connect Oregon grant from the Oregon Department of Transportation. Next slide, please. Since opening to the public last fall, this new neighborhood park, which is in an underserved area of the district, has been incredibly popular. It's currently called Crowell Woods, but as you may know, it will be looking at a new name. It is truly a little bit of everything, with amenities such as a picnic shelter, playground, community garden, soft surface trails, and natural areas. The few times that I have visited this site, I'm always approached by park patrons who are incredibly grateful for this new development. Next slide, please. So I realized that was very, very quick, but you had a much more thorough report in your packet. I am grateful for your time tonight to come and share this with you and answer any questions that you might have. I'm really proud of all we've accomplished in the last year and certainly what's to come. Also, I have to say, grants are truly group efforts, and it takes an amazing team like the one we have at THPRD to make it all work. And so, yes, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Cindy. That was amazing. Felicita?
Just a huge thank you. And I'm totally biased because Cindy and I used to work together. That's how small this area is. You can't hide. But I'm just so excited about this work, all the intentionality of it. And it's just wonderful to see the results. And I love how it's across the region and it's all different types of projects. So kudos to you and all the people that you're working with, and to Janine, who does this work as well. So awesome work. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Wendy?
Okay, this time I unmuted myself. I'm really excited about the work going forward on the grants program. I really think that this is going to be one of our strengths in the years to come. I think it's an excellent collaborative effort with staff and with the Park Foundation. In the course of reading the packet, I did have questions and I sent them to staff, and I thank you very much for your answers. But one of the things that I asked you for, I really wanted to know if you would be willing to share with the rest of the board, because it was so much fun to hear this or to read this. And it's the kind of thing that's just sort of totally THPRD centered. I asked about the Greenway Bridge replacement project. And this is where we had a footbridge that was basically rotten, and the support structure beams were just really awful. So it ended up with a hazard tree being removed from Steeplechase Park. And I just wondered if you, Cindy, if you're aware of the answer that you guys gave, if you could just, I don't want to steal your thunder. I'd like to have you just say, you know, how creative our staff was working on this project.
I'm actually going to let Janine answer that one. I know she worked with John Campbell on crafting that response to you.
Yeah, and I was amazed when he sent the response. So as you mentioned, Wendy, that there was a tree that was taken down in Steeplechase Park. The costs were estimated for this bridge replacement, hiring outside contractors and getting outside materials for $400,000. We were able to do it for $5,000 with existing staff using the reclaimed numbers. A portable sawmill was hired to create the support beams. We purchased supplies in advance. And again, just we were able to do this for a much reduced cost. The bridge is the same size, but has new decking. So it should also be a safer bridge.
Thank you. And I just wanted everybody else to hear, because it just made me smile when I read this. So this is what being, you know, good on your feet in a great person, you know, for a great reason. This is what happens. And so I just wanted to share it with the rest of my board members. Thank you.
Any other board comments or questions? I see Doug's popped on.
Yes, we will move to reopening with Aisha.
Thank you, Doug. Good evening, board members. This is Aisha Panis, your Director of Park and Recreation Services, and I'd like to give you an update on where we are with reopening our facilities and services to the public. So Friday late morning, we got great news that some changes had been issued in the guidance that the state and the Oregon Health Authority have been updating and sharing out with the state during the course of the COVID pandemic. And the very exciting news that we heard on Friday was not that we were entering phase 2, which is what we were all holding our breath for and waiting and planning for and strategizing around, but that there had been some guidance changes allowing for additional uses within phase 1 counties. So the two areas of guidance that were changed for us that were particularly informative were regarding our outdoor recreation sector and also pools, spas, and splash pads, which also includes sports courts. So the big takeaways from the guidance that was issued on Friday was that we can open pools in phase 1 counties now. We also were able to open playgrounds, and so we're in the process of opening up those amenities as well as adding back swings where those had been removed and unlocking basketball hoops. And we are also looking at places where there are still prohibitions. And for us, that includes sandboxes. And we do have a few of those in the district. But we also still have a ban on full contact sports. So we are working on signage that we will be posting in park sites over the course of the next few days. And we'll be removing the signage that did prohibit additional activities that are now authorized. So we were thrilled to have that news. It was a little challenging to get it right before a holiday weekend, but we are rallying quickly to put into place all of the things that we can to bring those services back to the public. On the next slide, I will talk to you about the facilities that we have opened in the last week. And so a Herculean effort was put forth to open 2 of our facilities. And on the next slide, I'll talk to you about Conestoga. So down at Conestoga Recreation and Aquatic Center, which until Friday, we anticipated only opening the dry side of the building. We were able to open that facility on the 31st, so just this past Monday, and not this past Monday, a week ago Monday. But we were able to open the facility with some limited use. So it's not the rec center of days past. We are in a new model, and it's a scalable model, we hope, based on how things go. But we have been able to open the facility 7 days a week. It will operate for 12 hours a day, And we are able to allow 12 people into our weight room, 12 people doing cardio activities. People are required to sign up for these activities, and they can do so by visiting our portal online. We also have some fitness classes, a limited number of fitness classes and yoga classes, and we're also planning to open some out-of-school time programs at that center, as well as preschool programs. And now, based on the guidance from Friday, we are working on our plans to reopen the pools at Conestoga as well. On the next slide, I will let you know what we're doing at the Athletic Center. That was the second facility that we were excited to open up this past Monday, the 31st of August. And here again, we're doing some 7-day-a-week operations, but limited hours. We have moved some cardio equipment and weight equipment from another facility. This is not a facility or amenity that Athletic Center has had in the past, but we did take over one of the basketball courts and outfit it for weights and for cardio. So that's a new feature for those users of the Athletic Center. We also do have fitness and yoga classes and personal training. The walking track is available for registration or reservation use. And then we do have some what were previously drop-in facilities, but now do require that online reservation for badminton, pickleball, and tennis, table tennis. And I will say that badminton has proven to be the very, very hot topic in that center to date. Next slide, please. We're also working on opening some additional facilities, and the first one that will open, I believe it's next week, is the tennis center. So the Babette Horenstein Tennis Center is going to open up next Monday, and again, we'll have some limited hours from what our patrons have been used to at that facility, but we did take a hard look at when we had people visiting the center, where we saw the demand. And for us, we really saw an early in the day demand and then later in the evening. So we will have a split schedule at this facility, and we'll be open from 8 a.m. to noon, Monday through Friday, and then again from 3 to 9 p.m. in the evening, and we'll have some hours on Saturday and Sunday as well. We will be doing reservations for courts for tennis and pickleball, and we'll also be providing some private lessons. So on this slide, I just wanted to show, and I recognize this is pretty small font, but the activity reservations image that you see on the bottom of the screen is what our patrons see when they go to reserve these times within our centers. So they're able to hit a drop-down menu and pick the activity that they want to participate in, make that reservation, and show up at the facility. And it helps us with our contact tracing so that we can keep people as safe as possible when they are within our facilities. Next slide, please. Also later in the month, next week, also mid-week, we're planning on opening Cedar Hills Recreation Center, and this is going to be the hub for our out-of-school time programs. So we have staff right now that are transitioning from summer camps to help us with the formulation of this whole new program, which is an adjustment of what we had with our after-school program, and it's now a full day program. So we've shared some of this information in the past, and we did have some marketing done around our out-of-school time programs last week, but we do want to open up this facility. It will house a number of the out-of-school time programs, so will Conestoga, and our hope is that we'll be able to work with the school district on providing these same programs within some of their facilities. So you may recall that last year we ran a pilot program at Chehalem Elementary offering an after-school program there. So we're in process to reconstitute an out-of-school time program, which would be 8 a.m., 7:30 a.m. until 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, that would allow people to have a safe place for their child to go. There will be enrichment time, some support for getting into the online mobile learning platforms, but lots of time to play. And so we are working on that program at Chehalem, and we have the opportunity to grow into multiple other school sites should there be demand. So that is what we're hoping to do with our out-of-school time program. And once that kind of takes off, we're also looking at adding some additional activities, those reservation-based activities at Cedar Hills. Cedar Hills will also house one of our preschool programs that we're working on as well. So next slide, please. At the Tualatin Hills Nature Center, we're not quite able to welcome folks back into that building just yet, but we do want to have a presence on that site. And one of the things that the Nature Center staff have been really excellent at doing is providing various different programs for preschool. And so we've had preschool programs at the center. We've had them also up at Cooper, out at Jenkins Estate. Our Nature Kids program has been a very popular one. And so the Nature Center is going to be that hub for our preschool activities. And so we don't intend to start that programming until October, but it will be sort of the hub and the coordination site for all of that preschool programming. And there may also be an opportunity for partnerships with the Beaverton School District for that preschool programming as well. Next slide, please. In addition to the center-based programs, which we're returning to for the first time in about 6 months, I didn't want to miss an opportunity to talk about the work that we're doing on the innovative programming side. So you may recall that we set up special teams to put our staff onto tasks that they were able to do in the pandemic and during the district closure, and innovative programming was one of those things. They did create a virtual rec center, which we've shared with you before, and we're now moving to provide some fee-based programming in addition to the free programming that we have had up on the site for a number of months. So the fee-based recreation center will offer classes that are led by our instructors, and that was feedback that we had gotten from folks that they were very interested in seeing the familiar faces of their instructors. And so we've taken some time to really analyze what we think translates well in that sort of environment. We're looking at ways we can provide our instructors with large screens so they can see the faces of the folks that they're participating with. And so that work is now underway, and we've set up a place where we can film and provide that sort of activity. We, in addition to the programming that we're providing, we're also hosting other programming that we think provides value to the community and that is well set up to be provided in that virtual format. So one of these is an idea that I think a few board members have talked with Doug about, and it's the CIJ for Kids Insight for Life program. And this is a really interesting program. It's sort of like a life coaching opportunity for youth and teens. And so we had talked about the fact that folks that have older children that may not need care and to be supervised on a daily basis to do their programs might still benefit from someone checking in with them, talking with them about school life issues that they might be going through. And so this is a program, I believe it's an 8-week program that's been deeply discounted for patrons of THPRD. So people can sign their children up to have this online coaching opportunity to talk about the things they might not be comfortable talking with their parents or other peers about. So we're very excited about the opportunity that that's going to provide. And another course that we're offering through the online virtual rec center is a Code to the Future, build your own video game. So you'd imagine something built on a computer could translate well to a computer instruction. So we've had some classes held in the summer, and we're looking forward to fall programming with that opportunity as well. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. I didn't talk about mobile programming because you will hear about that in a separate presentation coming up next, I believe. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has them, but this was intended to provide you a high-level overview of the things that we are super excited to get back to doing and delivering to our community.
Thank you, Aisha, and the whole team. Thank you. Quick question. I'm going to challenge you to a 30-second answer because I know we're really tight on time. Bathrooms, porta potties at playgrounds, are they coming back? When? Curious because I'm going to be asked and I need to be able to answer the question.
Absolutely. We're happy to provide you with talking points around restrooms. You cannot underestimate the amount of time we have spent talking about restrooms here at THPRD. We have been able to shift some resources as our centers come back on, and we have been able to bring on a limited number of custodial positions to help with the centers. We've been able to shift some of our staff around to do cleaning of outlying restroom sites. Right now, to my knowledge, we don't have any porta potties out other than ones that are paid for by user groups. I believe we have our portable toilets removed. For those sites that do have permanent restroom facilities, if we're programming those sites, we are now cleaning those sites. We had to be very selective about what we could provide to the community because there's requirements about those restrooms being available and needing to clean them twice a day, for example. So we've had a lot of conversations about what we're able to do there. So Cedar Park will have open restrooms. The Turpinning Complex will have open restrooms. The Mountain View Champions Fields will have those permanent restrooms open, and there may be others based on the programming load that they have and rentals that we have there. So we are looking at that. And also, Nature Center and Cooper Mountain, when Cooper Mountain is able to open again, those restrooms will be open within the next week, 10 days.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wendy?
Thank you very much, Aisha. I wondered if you could give us an idea of the universe that we're talking about, the number of kids potentially that we could be serving with our out-of-school programming, number one. And number two, if you could give us any updates on discussions with Beaverton School District in terms of their willingness to work with us on these programs.
Yes, I mentioned BSD previously in the presentation because we have had ongoing conversations with them. They are still sorting out how they're delivering their online programming. They don't have a variety of open classrooms within their building. They have opened up their schools to teachers to teach from their classrooms. And therefore, what they have been willing to offer up to us and any other provider of care is a gymnasium and a cafeteria. And within those two spaces, they can only have 20 children, and that's in pods of 10 per pod, pods of 10 children per. So that's a total of 40 children at each school. So right now with Chehalem, we're looking at the potential for 40 children. If we are able to get into 4 other schools, that would be 40 children per site. Within our own facilities, we're limited because there are rules on how many people in a building total there can be. And so in order to provide both for our staff and for folks that are coming in to use weight room, cardio, etc., we have capped that at about 40 children per site as well. So right now we're looking at out of school time programs at Cedar Hills and Conestoga. So that's up to 70 because we have fewer classrooms at Conestoga. So 70 at THPRD and then 40 at Chehalem. And then what the school district has talked about is the fact that they're open to opening the doors of those 4 other facilities depending on demand. And right now we're meeting demand. We have a few open spots in our current programs at the 2 rec centers, and there's not been an overwhelming demand we've not been able to meet. Now, the school district was awarded at a meeting of the County Board of Commissioners yesterday funding to help offset the costs of childcare. They've not yet determined how they're going to allocate those funds, whether those will be allocated through childcare providers who will then provide either subsidized, partially or fully subsidized spots. So those decisions have not yet been made by the school district, but we're in conversation. We've lent our support. We've said we're ready to do this. We don't anticipate that if they were to say, we want to provide these funds to provide free childcare spots at all 15 Title I elementary schools, we don't know that we, THPRD alone, can step up to fill that because there is still a pretty significant ask on the staffing side. But I think that what the school district is looking at is the capability of each of their providers within the schools of taking on this opportunity and working with them. So we stand ready. We've got a program that we're building for the different rec centers that they can absolutely roll over into those sites. So it really depends on the demand. I think the demand is really going to be dependent upon how those supplemental funds are going to be allocated by the school district.
Thank you, Aisha. And I really appreciate the fact that you and your staff are in instant contact with the school district. This is a moving target, as we all know. And so I'm really appreciative, again, for your nimbleness and your staff's nimbleness on this. So thank you for pursuing it.
You're very welcome. We're happy to do it.
Thank you. Heidi or Tia, any quick comments? Okay. I'm super excited about the innovative programming. Thank you. Doug?
Yes, we're going to move to Julie Rota, who's got mobile rec.
All right, good evening. I'm Julie Rocha, the Sports Department Manager, and I'm going to give you an update on the Community Psyche grant-funded activities. And on the next slide, I will start with mobile programs. Mobile programs will be offered 7 days a week from 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. We wanted to be able to offer a large range of offerings and times, and we are also offering 70 opportunities each week to ensure participants have an opportunity to participate. Staff will be utilizing 6 vehicles to get programs and activities out to the community. Staff has plotted maps to ensure services are spread out throughout the entire district, which includes 6 low-income housing complexes, 8 BSD Title I schools, and 17 THPRD parks. Staff are also developing recreational kits for all programs that can be handed out at scheduled locations, including BSD meal sites. The next slide will update you on Fitness in the Park. Fitness in the Park started on Saturday, August 29th with yoga, and we had 19 participants. Staff is running classes 7 days a week with 13 different class offerings each week. Currently, yoga is our most popular class, averaging 15 participants each class. We are excited to see older adults also participating in yoga and Tai Chi classes. On the next slide, I'm excited to share with you about our mobile rec camps. Mobile rec camp started on August 31st. We have a total of 6 camps being offered over the next 2 weeks at Jenkins Estate, Camp Rivendell, and Raleigh Park. We have 35 participants enrolled over the next 2 weeks, and this week we currently have 19 participants. Camps are free and offered to low-income housing residents, scholarship families, and community partners. These camps would typically cost $250 per week per child, and we're thankful for the grant so we can provide camps to all district residents. Staff reached out to previous participants, low-income housing complexes, and THPRD scholarship participants. Staff have been doing a great job leading activities, games, and lots of arts and crafts. The next slide, I will go into detail about each mobile programming. So we have Nature Mobile, Rec Mobile, Adaptive, and WOW, which is Wellness on Wheels. These programs will start the week of September 22nd, and we will focus on cross-programming to ensure patrons have an opportunity for multiple activities of different interests. We are also supporting each other's programs. So for example, the Nature Mobile and fitness instructors from the WOW program will also be going out once a month to provide nature and fitness focused programs to individuals experiencing disability. Programming includes a mix of kits for pickup and in-person activities at designated sites. Kits will contain supplies to participants in activities that are set for that day or activities that they can do at home. Nature Mobile is focusing on neighborhood nature. For example, nature that can be found in your local park, your backyard, or in your neighborhood. These activities will encourage patrons to explore where they live, and kits will be designed to encourage exploration. The Adaptive Rec Mobile is new, and we will be out at 3 sites 4 days a week to start. Staff will be visiting THPRD sites previously consistent in providing adaptive programs prior to the pandemic, locations such as Camp Rivendell, Mountain View Champions Park, and the LC Stir Center. Programs that are happening at the LC Stir Center Park outside will be similar to the therapeutic rec programs previously held on Monday nights. We are also partnering with FACT Oregon, Autism Society of Oregon, and Adaptive Sports Northwest to reach more participants. Wellness on Wheels will be going to 4 low-income housing facilities and planning to be in parks to give away yoga mats and fitness kits. Before questions, I'd just like to thank all the staff who worked on securing the Community Psyche Grant, and to Emily Kent, Karen Monday, Ann Satterfield, Jen Smurl, and Cynthia Wahardo, who are working really hard to implement all of these mobile programs. Thank you.
All right, and then I think Holly has one last update.
Okay, we'll just jump to the next slide, please. I'm going to talk about what we're doing with the Community Psyche Grant for events and community partnerships. Can we go to the next slide, please? So just as an overview, we prioritized mobile rec for the Community Psyche Grant, and with the remaining funds, we distributed those between community events and community partnerships. Those funds are available to be spent now through the end of March 2021. At this point, we have about 30 events in the pipeline, but I put and counting because we are still in the planning stages. Our focus has been on health and safety. These are going to be small events. While we're in phase 1, the maximum number of people who can participate at any one time is 50. We've got to have all the appropriate physical distancing in place, all the added enhanced safety measures, and we've got to think about how to do creative events differently. So health and safety are our focus. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and access are another focus for us. We want to put these events throughout the community. We want to make them accessible, they're free, and we want to make sure that we're sharing our values of being welcoming and inclusive and working with community partners on events that target our underserved populations. We are also using these funds to strengthen our community partnerships and, bottom line, coming up with events that bring us together to lift our community spirit, which we all need at this time. Next slide, please. So there were 8 categories of events in our grant proposal. I'll just quickly run through what we're thinking in some of these. We are working on neighborhood park concerts. These are not concerts in your traditional sense. These are the mobile DJ that we were working with on Rock the Block, and we see these as being really fluid music enjoyment opportunities in these parks. You'll also notice that the parks were selected strategically because they are parks that are new to the district and need to have an opening celebratory event. So that's how we selected these locations. We're working on neighborhood park events. More Chalk the Blocks are coming. Pop-up dog events are coming. So we will be putting pop-up dog parks at the 2 sites. I think it was discussed during the board update that the Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee is working on the next 2 sites for where dog park could go, the dog runs could go, and we will co-locate these events with those dog run locations. We're also working on youth pop-up sports challenges. So think of a little mini sort of hop around and try all sorts of different skills-based activities at an event targeted for younger youth. We have 2 drive-in movies in the pipeline. These will be registration events. We can accommodate up to 80 vehicles at each location. At Winkleman Park, we'll be showing Raiders of the Lost Ark, and at Hazeldale Park, which this event is in October, closer to Halloween, we will be showing Hotel Transylvania. We will be having a Halloween event. We know Halloween is on everyone's mind. So we have a drive-through trick-or-treat event that is being planned at HMT. And I want to extend an invitation to our board of directors because we are looking for community partners or groups that want to hand out candy to kiddos at this event. I know we're talking to law enforcement, firefighters, and we thought it'd be great if our board of directors wants to hand out candy to kiddos at this event. So the invitation is in your hands if you'd like to be there. Next slide, please. We are working on many cultural celebrations. We'll be celebrating Day of the Dead and Holi, the Hindu festival of colors. That will be happening in spring. The Holi event the Dia de los Muertos will be happening this month, and next month we'll be having 2 events. We also have activities targeted for our 55 and better community. So we are planning drive-in bingo at the Stir Center, which will be a very fun couple of events. And we have Fun with Friends. So these are our partnership with the folks that come in the costumes and interact with community members and with youth in the parks, and they're always super, super popular. Our message garden events have become incredibly popular. We have had several pop up. We've had lots of volunteers come from that. Lots of community partners have reached out and said they want to host a message garden event. So that is definitely growing and a great partnership to show our values values to support the end of systemic racism and to talk about our community values as a district. Next slide, please. So I want to shine a spotlight on our Talking Wall event that will be happening. It's our first Talking Wall. It'll be this Saturday, September 12th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Sunset Sports Complex. As Felicita mentioned, the committee got to review the artwork and make decisions on approving the student artwork. Just to explain a little bit, this is a partnership with the Sunset High School Black Student Union and Color Outside the Lines. This has absolutely been an amazing partnership, and this organization pairs BIPOC mentors with BIPOC artists to help them with their artistic creativity, and it's an opportunity for us to show our solidarity for racial justice reform. And I am remiss, I wanted to thank above Lisa Wentworth, Karen Madsen, and Keith Watson for the community neighborhood events. I have to say that team's creativity is off the charts, and I cannot believe how much they can come up with so little time and so many things to figure out. They're doing amazing. And on the Talking Walls, I have got to just shine a lot of love at Lulu Ballesteros. She is an absolute rock star, and this event has just gone from a small little idea to this amazing collaboration. There will be an opportunity for a board member to speak at the event at 3 o'clock, so we hope that you're all there. And there will be multiple stations at this event. So while the murals are being painted, that will be one station. We will have a Chalk the Block station, so people will be in pods of like 6 or 8, and they'll be able to rotate around to different activities from helping paint these murals. And these will be sketched on the walls, and it'll be really a paint by numbers. I've been told that even with my limited artistic ability that I can't screw it up if I participate. And we will have help and oversight from our friends from Color Outside the Lines. We will also have an I Have a Dream art activity where people will be able to place art on the fence at the Sunset Sports Complex with their own personal message of having a dream. And we will have a spoken word contest or participation, and also a message garden event at here. So there's lots of activities going on, lots of small group activities, ability for people to rotate around that afternoon, and it's going to be pretty special. Next slide, please. I wanted to show some of the other murals that are going up. So we have in total 5 murals that are going up at the Sunset Sports Complex. All of these were done by the student artist in partnership and help with their mentor. And I have to say, some of the stories were just utterly inspiring of young folks saying, this is the first time I've ever submitted my art. They were so moved by the time that we're at, and they're so excited to see their expression of creativity right by their school and right in their communities. This has been a really beautiful unifying project. Next slide, please. This is the final piece of artwork that will be going up at one of the 5 locations there. Next slide, please. We also have 2 welcoming walks. We'd hope to get more on the books, but as you can see, the planning time was really short, and we were calling upon community partners to really lead these events. So we've helped create the marketing materials, we helped create select the locations, we helped create the routes, but we're really relying on our partnership with a community partner to do the recruitment and to get people to participate. This photo is from last year's welcoming walk, so obviously we will have some physical distancing differences, but these are going to be a true co-produced collaboration with these community organizations. And I just wanted to mention, Lulu did volunteer to come tonight to read the proclamation, but I didn't have the heart to let her because she is working both Saturday and Sunday at the welcoming walk and the talking walls, and I wanted her to have one night at home. I thought she deserved a night off, so forgive me, that was my decision to give her the night off there. But we're super excited about the welcoming walk activities. Next slide. And I wanted to end with just sort of an overview calendar. As you can see, a lot of our focus, and again, we're struggling with a lot of factors from weather to coordination with community partners to vendors and getting everything set up. Usually we have months to plan things. In this case, we've had weeks, in some cases days. So you can see a huge concentration in September and October events. We will be rounding out this list and continuing to update you with more events as they get scheduled. And we have more community partner events that we know are coming. But that is a preview and an overview of where we're at with the Community Psyche Grant for events and community partnerships. Thank you.
Amazing. We'd like to open for any questions or comments both on Julie's presentation and Holly's presentation. Wendy?
First of all, thank you very, very much. It's really exciting. We could easily have just said, oh, woe is all of us. This is just a terrible time for all of us. But you went right ahead and said, what can we do to make things better and to look ahead? So thank you very much for that. I have one small request, has to do with Halloween. We are a park and rec district. Could we hand out things in addition to candy, please?
You know, I feel like I've heard that one before, and my mother's senses are tingling. So yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm going to focus on the in addition to, because I don't want to not hand out candy, but we will do in addition to.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments from my colleagues? Tia?
No questions or anything. I just want to praise you guys all for all the work you've done and the amazing stuff that you've come up with, and just turning a hard situation into something wonderful is just so reflective of our staff, and what a great connection you have to the community to pick out things that our community is going to love. And it's funny because that Community Psyche Grant is just such a weird name for the grant, but it's going to do exactly what it is going to improve everybody's psyche and bring us together in a harder time. So thank you to the staff and everyone for all your wonderful work.
Heidi?
I'll just echo what Tia had to say. No particular questions. Just thank you for all your hard work.
Wonderful. Doug?
Yes, we can move into our next agenda items here. We've got a couple budget transfer allocations that we need to do just to clear funding for three particular projects. Lori Baker's got the first one here with regard to the art piece at the Patricia Reeser Art Center. And we can go into explanation a little bit of what we know of the art piece, but there's still some selection process coming up. So at a minimum, the front end is the financial part that Lori can discuss.
Thank you. Good evening. In June, the board adopted the fiscal year 2021 budget, including appropriations for the SDC fund. Subsequent to the budget approval, the district identified the need to provide $150,000 in support of the city of Beaverton for artwork in an urban plaza area. This support is being provided to the city of Beaverton through an SDC credit of $16,240 for SDC fees associated with the Patricia Reeser Center for the Arts, and SDC support of $133,760. The cost will be incurred under the appropriation category of materials and services. Thus, a transfer from the capital outlay budget will be necessary to cover these costs. Your packet includes a resolution to consider to allow for this transfer to occur. And
we can have Bruce talk a little bit about the what we know to date about the art piece. It's the board's call.
Sure. Yeah, let's do that.
Sure. Bruce?
Great. So briefly, the Patricia Reeser Arts Center, next slide, please, is going to be basically a theater, a public art gallery, rehearsal and event space, and a workshop space. And what's really important about it, next slide, is that it's very centrally located right in the middle of Beaverton, near the Round and near the Mac station, which makes it easy for folks to get to. Next slide. And one of the focal points for the center, or the outside, is noted here on the screen, is in this project area is a big piece of interactive public art. And I was the representative for the Park District to select an artist. Next slide, please. We went through a process that involved a variety of different people from the community, from the City of Beaverton, from the Arts Commission, and we went through this process to select an artist. Next slide. And what happens with a public art piece is that we don't buy something out of a catalog so much as the artist is selected based on past works and how appropriate it is for the site. The artist is given a certain amount of money, and they use that for design, for construction, for permits, for installation, all that fun stuff. And they will design something very specific to the site with community input in mind. Next slide. And so in order for us to go from this just blank street scene to having a nice big piece of art there, we need to allocate funds so that the artist can start work on it. And that's all I've got.
Great, thank you so much, Bruce. Do any of my colleagues have a motion?
Yes, this is Heidi. I move that the board approve Resolution 2020-17 to authorize the transfer of appropriated funds within the 2021
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Felicitas, second.
Thank you. Jessica, will you please take the vote?
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Tia Ping,
Yes.
Felisa Monteblanco,
Yes.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer Prick.
Yes. Thank you so much. Motion carries. Next up is an SDC reallocation. Gary?
You bet. Gary Keck is going to handle this one.
All right, good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm Gary Keck, the Design and Development Manager. And tonight I'm here seeking board approval to authorize the reallocation of SDC appropriated funds between projects within the 2020-21 adopted budget. This request has two separate items in it. Next slide, please. The first is to reallocate $65,000 of undesignated SDC funds to the Cedar Hills Park project. As you all know, the park was opened to the public in October of 2019. The Cedar Hills project is on track to be under budget, but we didn't entirely complete it at the end of the 2019-20 budget year due to the impacts from the pandemic. So on this master plan, you'll see there are two adjustments that we still need to make on the park. In the upper right-hand corner in the circle there is the sport court, where we're looking to add some additional netting. And then down in the lower left-hand corner of the map next to the splash pad is the play area, where we're looking to rotate a slide within that play area. And in addition, we have a few final easement recording fees that need to be funded as well. So next slide, please. So here is a picture on the left of the existing condition of the sport court. You can see it's a 10-foot tall chain link fence. And what we found just after opening the park is that we were getting futsal balls being kicked over the fence, and in particular over the western fence going into Cedar Hills Boulevard. So to remedy this, what we've come up with is there on the right. It's real similar to what we did. That's Mountain View Champions Park, where we're going to add some posts to the end of the sport court with some netting on top. And the thought is to add 6 feet above that 10-foot chain link fence to stop the balls. Next slide, please. So the second action or item tonight is to reallocate $173,500 to the new Southeast Quadrant 2 Baker Loop Neighborhood Park project, which is located on the recently purchased BG property. It's probably how you know it best. The reallocation includes transferring $135,000 from the South Cooper Mountain Heights Master Plan, which you can see here in the vicinity map, and in addition to another $38,500 of undesignated SDC funds. So this park here, it's in the red in the center of the vicinity map, and it's just to the east of Mountainside High School on the east side of 175th. Next slide, please. So staff recently learned that the developer of this park project, they're the developer for the planned unit development as well, will not be ready to enter into a purchase and sale agreement for at least another year. And since the district doesn't own the property, we feel it's a little premature to begin the master planning for the park. Next slide, please. So in the meantime, the district did recently purchase, as you know, the 2-acre BG property for what we're calling the Southeast Quadrant Baker Loop Neighborhood Park. As you may recall, the district submitted this purchase to the Land Water Conservation Fund grant in the amount of $650,000. And we were fortunate enough to hear the news that we've been recommended for funding. The final approval from National Park Service is expected this winter. Next slide. So here's an aerial of that property. Lombard is heading north-south, up and down, north-south there. As a condition of the grant, it requires the district to open this park within 3 years. So reallocating the funding from South Cooper Mountain Park to this project is going to help us get the project started with the master planning so we can meet this timeline. And the remaining funding necessary to complete the design and construction of the park will be addressed when staff returns to the board in December with an update to the 5-year CIP list. So next slide. So stated in the board memo, staff is seeking board approval authorizing the reallocation of funds between projects within the 2020-21 adopted budget. And that was a quick presentation. I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions from my colleagues? Is there a motion?
Ashley, this is Wendy. I move that the board authorize the reallocation of the funds between projects within the FY 2020 and 2021 adopted budget.
This is Tia, I second.
Thank you. Jessica, will you please take the vote?
Heidi Edwards.
Yes.
Felisa Monteblanco.
Yes.
Tia Ping.
Yes.
Wendy Kroger.
Yes.
Ashley Hart-Myers-Prig.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you. And one last agenda item, Holly.
Sorry, my computer goes slow sometimes. Okay, as a follow-up to the board's discussion last month, we reached out to the 10 people on advisory committees with terms expiring at the end of 2020. 5 of the members requested reappointment for 1 year, and we're very appreciative of the board's acknowledgement of the challenges of meeting this year. The resolution before you requests reappointment of these 5 individuals for a 1-year term, as we discussed. The remaining 5 people declined for a variety of reasons. Those stemmed from changes in their personal commitments to caregiver responsibilities and discomfort with returning to the potential of in-person meetings. The 5 vacancies are distributed pretty evenly among the 3 committees, leaving 2 committees with 8 members and 1 committee with 9 members. Staff's recommendation at this time is to hold off on recruitment for the 5 vacant positions and revisit the opportunity to recruit when we're able to return to in-person meetings. So that would hopefully be mid next year, and it would mean a mid-cycle recruitment, but we feel that that makes sense to wait until that time and to take a pause on recruitment until we can return to in-person meetings. This combination is from feedback feedback we've heard from community members, including advisory committee members who've talked about their challenges with meeting online and the awkwardness of not having established relationships with each other through the meeting process, but also in recognition of staff are really stretched really thin. And I don't think we could give the recruitment process the full attention it deserves with all of the openings and all of the grant activities and everything in front of us right now. So our recommendation is to move forward with appointing these 5 individuals and look at the possibility of a mid appointment next year when we're able to return to in-person meetings. And with that, I'll turn it over to the board.
Thank you, Holly. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Okay, is there a motion?
This is Felicita. Thank you for all the thoughtfulness for all this work. I appreciate it. I move that the board approve resolution number 2020-18, appointing advisory committee members.
This is Tia. I will second.
Thank you. Jessica?
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Tia Ping,
Yes.
Felicita Montelenko,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer Pritt.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you so much. We have reached the conclusion of our agenda. Thank you all for getting this meeting and all the great content. Thank you for having prepared for us today. We are adjourned. We will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody.